Chapter 246. The huge furnace burned with an astonishing amount of heat. The flames were no ordinary flames. Under the support of the formation, the flames actually emitted a faint blue light, appearing incomparably mystical. In the middle of the furnace, there was a liquid metal constantly churning. The strangest thing was that the liquid metal actually had countless runes flashing on it. It was extremely mystical. Seeing this scene, everyone present was stunned. Was this the so-called god weapon? Why did it feel like there wasn't even an embryo? Mo Yezi spoke in a low voice. Weapons are weapons of slaughter. Throughout history, when a weapon is first forged, it has never been tainted by sharp killing intent. This time, I'm preparing to use a refining method that I've been researching for over 10 years, using a formation to refine a weapon. What you see right now is the embryo of this weapon. However, I did not allow it to take shape. Instead, I allowed it to continuously circulate within the formation. Later on, when you fight in the arena, the sharp killing intent that you produce will be channeled into the embryo through the formation, allowing it to take shape. In the end, even I don't know what kind of weapon the embryo will become after absorbing enough sharpness of slaughter chi. It all depends on the type and quality of the sharpness of slaughter chi that you're good at. Therefore, this time, the God Weapon Conference will not only be forged by me, but also by the geniuses present here. The final appearance of the God Weapon will also be decided by you. After hearing Mo Yezi's explanation, everyone came to a sudden realization. No wonder before the God Weapon Conference began, Mo Yezi said that he did not know what kind of God weapon he would forge this time. In the beginning, everyone felt that it was a little strange. A master refiner actually said that he did not know what kind of weapon he would forge. Was this not a joke? Only now did everyone understand what he meant. They also understood why the Hidden Sword Villa and Mo Yezi had made such a big fuss. Without them, Mo Yezi's new refining method would not have been successful. After Mo Yezi finished speaking, Qing Tingfeng stood up and spoke in a low voice. Grandmaster Mo Yezi has already said everything he needed to say. The materials for this divine weapon convention were provided by our Hidden Sword Mountain Manor, and the person who forged the divine weapon was Grandmaster Mo Yezi. Similarly, this also requires the cooperation of all of you. In the end, the ownership of the divine weapon is clear to all. The divine weapon chose its master, and only the strongest could become the master of the divine weapon. There was no such thing as cheating. As for the arena competition, the rules are also very simple. The 5 arenas will start the competition at the same time, and the opponents will be decided by drawing lots. At this point, Qing Tingfeng paused and said, "Everyone here is from the same Jianghu. This time, the God Weapon Conference is mainly about sparring and exchanging pointers. Therefore, there will be martial artists from the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa as judges. This is to prevent swords from being blind and fists from being careless. If he couldn't control his strength properly after unleashing his true fire, it wouldn't be pretty. Of course, if any of you really want to fight to the death, the Hidden Sword Villa will not stop you, but both of you must agree." Qing Tingfeng's last sentence was obviously meant for Chu Xiu and the others. In normal sparring, everyone controlled their strength and basically they wouldn't even get hurt. However, looking at the conflict between Chu Xiu and the others just now, it was obvious that this matter wouldn't end so easily. If something really happened, the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa wouldn't be able to stop them, but it wouldn't be good if they didn't stop them either. Therefore, it was better to make things clear first. When something happened, even if the sects behind them wanted to find trouble, they wouldn't be able to find the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa. After explaining the rules, a few disciples of the Mirror Lake Villa walked over with boxes. In the boxes there were heavenly stems, earthly branches, and even hours written on them. The martial artist who drew the same number, after the people from the Mirror Lake Villa called out their numbers, could go up to the arena to compete. The first few martial artists to go up were the kind that didn't have any fame. They knew that there was no hope of getting the divine weapon, so both sides just sparred normally, treating it as an exchange. There were basically no real fights, so the progress was very fast. The second batch of martial artists to go up included Xie Xiaolu. His opponent was a martial artist in his 30s, who was only in the Xiantian realm. Obviously, he wasn't here to do anything. Without waiting for Xie Xiaolu to speak, the martial artist cupped his hands and said with a smile, "I am Lin Zhao from the Western Chu Kingdom. It is my honor to be able to stand on the same arena as young Master Xie. However, I don't dare to fight against an outstanding person like young Master Xie, so this round I admit defeat." After saying that, Lin Zhao cupped his hands and directly walked down the arena, without any hesitation. Seeing this scene, everyone present thought to themselves that this was a smart person. In fact, those who came to participate in the Divine Weapon Conference, other than Xie Xiaolu and Chu Xiu, most people didn't even think that they could get a divine weapon. Therefore, most of them came to watch the show and some of them came to make friends with the elites of the Jianghu. Just like Lin Zhao just now, although he had decisively surrendered, he had stated his name and origin, leaving an impression on Xie Xiaolu. This couldn't be considered a favor because he couldn't beat Xie Xiaolu. However, if he met Xie Xiaolu again in the Western Chu Kingdom, he could bring up today's scene on the arena to reminisce about the past. This was the way of a smart person. Following that, most of the martial artists acted like this. If they met someone with similar strength, they would exchange pointers, but if they met someone like Chu Xiu who was famous, their opponent would directly surrender. After a few rounds, 90% of the martial artists present had already been eliminated. There were even some who didn't draw their lots and directly gave up. These people were just here to watch the show, they weren't interested in making friends with the disciples of the big sections. Chu Xiu stared at the divine weapon embryo in the center of the furnace. He felt that the melted metal had a familiar aura. There were also some people fighting fiercely in the arena, but it might be because the real strength of the people fighting was too low, so the sharp chi collected by the array was not much. It only made the flames in the furnace a little whiter. The energy of the golden spear was sharp, so the energy it showed was naturally white. Since the flames changed color, it meant that Mo Yezi's refining method was still effective. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu discovered that someone was also staring at the furnace. It was a very strange martial artist. His whole body was covered in a black robe and he also had a black robe hat on his head. His dressing was not strange. After all, the styles of the three countries in the Central Plains were different, especially in West Chu. There were also some martial artists who dressed strangely. Moreover, Chu Xiu had some impression of this martial artist. At the beginning he didn't reveal his strength. In the end he met an innate stage martial artist in his first battle, so he revealed the strength of the innate stage. When he met a martial artist in the inner chi realm, his strength was revealed to be in the inner chi realm. In the last 2 rounds he met a martial artist in the physical invulnerability realm, and this time his strength was also in the physical invulnerability realm. Even now, Chu Xiu couldn't determine whether the opponent had the strength of the 3-flower realm or not. This person's ability to hide his aura was definitely the best among martial artists of the same level. At this moment the person seemed to feel that Chu Xiu was paying attention to him. The martial artist immediately looked back, and a strange look appeared in his eyes, but he didn't say anything. At this moment, the people from the Hidden Sword Villa on the stage called out Chu Xiu's number. Chu Xiu leaped up and directly crossed over to one of the rings. In the first few rounds, Chu Xiu didn't make a move at all. His opponents immediately admitted defeat when they heard his name. This time, however, Chu Xiu's opponent was a martial artist in the physical invulnerability realm of Northern Yan origin. He was about 30 years old and held a strange machete in his hand. After seeing Chu Xiu, the martial artist's face showed a conflicted expression. The reason why he was conflicted was simple. This person was with Bai Wuji and the others. This time there were fewer martial artists from the Northern Yan, and Bai Wuji was the one with the most powerful background. So, naturally they would gather around Bai Wuji. He had seen the relationship between Bai Wuji and Chu Xiu. If it was someone else he would surrender. But now it was Chu Xiu. If he surrendered without even fighting, would Bai Wuji vent his anger on him? But if he fought, it was certain that he wouldn't be able to defeat Chu Xiu. Moreover, he had seen Chu Xiu's killing intent and madness with his own eyes. He even wanted to kill the young miss of the divine martial sect and cripple the elite disciples of the Sword King city. If he went up to fight him, wouldn't Chu Xiu cripple him too? In fact, this martial artist was worrying too much. Chu Xiu didn't even know who he was. He didn't even put Bai Wuji in his eyes, let alone Bai Wuji's followers. But he was wasting time here. Chu Xiu frowned and said, "Are you going to fight or not?" A judge from the Hidden Sword Villa at the Five Chi's origin realm also urged, "If you want to fight, then hurry up. If you don't have the confidence, then just surrender." In the eyes of this judge, there was no suspense at all in this battle. Not to mention Chu Xiu's fierce reputation. Even if an ordinary physical invulnerability realm martial artist fought against a 3-flower realm martial artist, the chance of winning was not high. What was this guy hesitating about? At this moment, a voice suddenly came, "If you don't want to fight him, how about I do it?" Everyone present immediately looked in the direction of the voice. They saw Shun Bai standing up with a long sword in his hand. He looked at Chu Xiu with an extremely sharp look in his eyes. At the same time, an extremely sharp sword chi was released around him, causing the martial artists around him to involuntarily retreat with a look of horror in their eyes. Chapter 247. Shen Bai's sudden provocation caused the surrounding people to instantly turn their attention to Shen Bai and Chu Xiu. They had all seen Shen Bai's provocative actions just now. Now that Shen Bai had stepped forward again, it was clear that the enmity between him and Chu Xiu wasn't small. It was to the extent that he couldn't wait to fight with Chu Xiu. Seeing Shen Bai's actions, the martial artist who originally wanted to challenge Chu Xiu felt relieved and quickly said, "I have no opinion." He was in a dilemma. Now it was time for Shen Bai, who had severely injured by Wuji. Since both of them were enemies of Chu Xiu, let them kill each other. Shen Bai looked at the Hidden Sword Villa's judge and said in a deep voice, "Since there will only be one winner in the end, it doesn't matter if it's earlier or later. I'm not breaking the rules by doing this." The Hidden Sword Villa's judge frowned and quickly looked at Cheng Tingfeng. Cheng Tingfeng thought for a moment and asked Chu Xiu, "Do you agree?" He couldn't be bothered with the grudges between these junior martial artists. Since they wanted to fight, it had nothing to do with the Hidden Sword Villa as long as they agreed. Chu Xiu's face suddenly revealed a smile. "Since someone can't wait, then I am willing to accompany." Cheng Tingfeng said in a deep voice, "Since you are ready to fight, then don't forget what I said before. If anything happens, my Hidden Sword Villa will not be responsible." Cheng Tingfeng wasn't afraid of the Azure Water Sword sect or the Guanzhong torture room, but if they were to seek an explanation from the Hidden Sword Villa because of their own disciples, Cheng Tingfeng would find it troublesome. Chu Xiu and Shen Bai both nodded. From the moment Chu Xiu saw Shen Bai, he knew that this matter wouldn't be easily resolved. This was karma and it needed to be repaid. One side stood while the other lay down. Only then would this karma be truly resolved. Seeing that both sides had agreed, the cultivator hurriedly walked down the stage. He would let these two guys fight first. He would just watch from the sidelines. In the arena, Shen Bai looked straight at Chu Xiu, but there was no longer any hatred in his eyes, only the desire to fight. It wasn't that he didn't hate Lu Zongyuan. When Chu Xiu had appeared in the Wei Prefecture, he had even specially begged Lu Zongyuan to use the power of the Azure Water Sword sect to kill Chu Xiu. However, from that time onwards, Shen Bai also knew what the burden on his shoulders was. From then on, he buried this hatred in his heart. In the entire Shen family, although the other people were related to him by blood, to Shen Bai, they were just strangers. The only family he truly acknowledged was Shen Mo. Chu Xiu had killed his only family member. This hatred was something that Shen Bai had to take revenge for, but revenge was no longer his only goal. Bai Wuji was his stepping stone, and now Chu Xiu was still his stepping stone. After the Divine Weapon Conference, Shen Bai wanted the entire martial world to hear his name, and know that his Azure Water Sword sect had once again flourished. Looking at Chu Xiu, Shen Bai said in a deep voice, "Chu Xiu, did you not expect me to appear here?" Chu Xiu nodded, "I didn't expect it. But when I saw you, I thought of Shen Mo who died under my sword. Although you are blood brothers, your personalities are completely different. You are much stronger than that trash." Shen Bai's eyes revealed a trace of dense killing intent, but he didn't get angry. He only said in a cold voice, "I just want to ask you one thing. Why did you kill Shen Mo back then? Your Chu clan met with misfortune. If Shen Mo died in the hands of others, it would be fine. But he died in your hands. What? During that battle, everyone in the Chu clan died, only Chu Xiu survived. Only Chu Xiu knew the truth." Chu Xiu looked at Shen Bai with a smile that didn't seem like a smile. "What's in it for me to say it?" Shen Bai said coldly, "If you don't say it, you will die a horrible death. If you say it, you will die a quick death." Chu Xiu shook his head. "If that's the case, then you will never have the chance to know this secret in this lifetime. Overconfidence becomes arrogance. I don't know who gave you the confidence to say this. 2 years ago, you were the eldest disciple of Azure Water Sword sect. I was just a nobody from a small clan. But now I, Chu Xiu, have become the patrol inspector of the Guanzhong torture room. I am ranked top 20 on the Longhu list. And you, Shen Bai, are still the eldest disciple of Azure Water Sword sect. What right do you have to say this to me?" Shen Bai slowly drew the long sword from his waist and said, "It is not easy to achieve what you have. If I were in your position, I might not be as good as you. But unfortunately, there are no ifs in this world. I didn't eat or drink in front of the sword comprehension stone. I comprehended the sword for 3 months and entered the three-flower realm. For today, I endured for 10 years and didn't step into the martial world. I memorized all the sword manuals of Azure Water Sword sect. All of this was for him to soar into the sky today. Just now, that Bai Wuji wasn't even qualified to be my stepping stone, but you, Chu Xiu, are qualified. It's fine if you don't tell me those secrets. Once you die, everything will end. When Shinbai said this, he carried a strong sense of confidence, or perhaps it could be said that he was conceited. As the eldest disciple of Azure Water Sword Sect, Lu Gongyuan once said that he would hand over the future of Azure Water Sword Sect to him when he was personally taught by Lu Gongyuan. From then on, Shinbai knew that he was different. If it wasn't for his talent and the potential he displayed, Lu Gongyuan, a martial Dao master, wouldn't have put so much effort into betting the future of Azure Water Sword Sect on him. For so many years, Lu Gongyuan stopped him from stepping into the martial world. He wanted him to be able to amaze the world and soar into the sky. This time, Shinbai was aiming for the top 10 of the Dragon and Tiger leaderboard. With Bai Wuji's strength, he was not even qualified to be his stepping stone. Only Chu Xiu was qualified to be his stepping stone. His real enemy was Xiahou Wujiang, who was also from a top faction and was ranked top 10 on the Longhu list. Sweeping away the stepping stone of Chu Xiu was just his first step into the martial world. Unsheathing his long sword, Shinbai didn't waste any more words with Chu Xiu. To be precise, his words weren't just for Chu Xiu, but for everyone present. Their Azure Water Sword Sect was back. In the previous generation, when Azure Water Sword Sect was flourishing, it was Lu Gongyuan who dominated the martial world. In this generation it was Shinbai who was famous. When the sword was unsheathed, the weather changed. When Shinbai stabbed out with his sword, the water vapor in the air, which was almost invisible to the naked eye, was transformed by the stellar energy and condensed into a huge icicle. It was several feet long and looked like an ice crystal sword. It directly slashed at Chu Xiu from the sky. The powerful and sharp sword chi tore through the air and made a deafening sonic boom. When the sword pierced out, the expressions of everyone present changed. Even Qing Tingfeng looked at Shinbai in astonishment. The power of this sword strike paled in comparison to the one Shinbai used to heavily injure Bai Wuji. Seeing the power of Shinbai's sword, even Mo Tianlin and Xie Xiaolu were somewhat worried for Chu Xiu. Where did this guy come from? How could his strength be so terrifying? But what was even more terrifying was that Azure Water Sword Sect had such a talented disciple. They had been hiding it all this time and only allowed him to come out and roam the martial world now. Whether it was Azure Water Sword Sect's forbearance or Shinbai's patience, in this martial world that prioritized fame and fortune, they were both terrifying. But on Chu Xiu's side, he was somewhat mentally prepared for Shinbai's display of strength. Since Lu Gongyuan had hidden Shinbai for more than 10 years before letting him out, it was imaginable how high Lu Gongyuan's expectations of Shinbai were. He basically treated Shinbai as the future hope of Azure Water Sword Sect. With the strength of Lin Kaiyun and Bai Wuji, their talents were considered decent and could be considered as elites. In the future, there was a possibility that they would inherit the sect and become the leader. But this was only a possibility. If Shinbai was on the same level as them, Lu Gongyuan wouldn't have placed so much importance on him. Therefore it was normal for Shinbai to display such prowess. Otherwise, after enduring for more than 10 years to nurture a disciple with the strength of Bai Wuji, the Azure Water Sword Sect should have been exterminated earlier. But strength wasn't something that only depended on one's cultivation level. Shinbai endured for more than 10 years and gathered all of Azure Water Sword Sect's resources and painstakingly cultivated. But Chu Xiu was the exact opposite. He was constantly fighting and rolling in the martial world. Chu Xiu wanted to see if Shinbai's painstakingly cultivated strength was stronger or if Chu Xiu's bloodshed in the martial world was stronger. When Shinbai's sword pierced over, Chu Xiu's red sleeve blade was already unsheathed. A pitch-black demonic chi lingered on his blade, making Chu Xiu look extremely evil and terrifying. Seeing this scene, be it the Mirror Lake Manor's martial artists or the Hidden Sword Manor's members, they all frowned slightly. After all, they were all from the righteous sections. Now that they saw Chu Xiu unscrupulously displaying his demonic arts, they still weren't used to it. But this divine weapon conference didn't restrict the righteous and demonic sections. Even Tong Kai Tai was here, so it wasn't a problem for Chu Xiu to use demonic arts. Even though the Guanzhong torture room was considered an orthodox sect, they didn't reject demonic arts. If the Guanzhong torture room didn't care, why would they care so much? At this moment, Chu Xiu's Avici 3 blades slashed out. The icicle shattered inch by inch in front of Chu Xiu's demonic chi blade. The closer Chu Xiu's blade presence got, the more intense the demonic chi surged. In the end, on the blade of Chu Xiu's blade, Chu Xiu's eyes were filled with endless demonic chi. His blade presence naturally transitioned from the first blade of the Avici 3 blades to the second blade. Under the monstrous demonic chi, the giant icicle shattered with a loud bang. The demonic chi blade that was filled with hatred slashed directly at Shinbai. Chapter 248. As long as Chu Xiu's 3 blades of Avicii was able to suppress the demonic chi backlash, its power would definitely be one of the most powerful moves among the same rank of martial arts. It would hurt both the opponent and the user, which was extremely extreme. In the past, when Fei Mo from the Sword King City fought with Chu Xiu, even if he used all his strength, he was still struck by Chu Xiu's blade until he vomited blood. Now his opponent was Shen Bai. When faced with Chu Xiu's blade, Shen Bai did not retreat but instead advanced. The sword momentum in his hand suddenly changed from the incomparably sharp to the majestic sword momentum. In an instant, the endless sword chi swept over like a great river. At this time, the crowd could not even see the appearance of Chu Xiu and Shen Bai clearly. Both of them were completely covered by the sword chi. The crowd could only vaguely see Chu Xiu's black blade light crisscrossing in the sword chi. Kenglin vast sea sweeping the world. The Kenglin sword sex sword technique was originally extremely overbearing. Otherwise, Lu Gongyuan would not have the nickname of river-sinking sword in the past. Right now, Shen Bai had also executed the Azure Water Sword sex sword art to the extreme. Chu Xiu's Avicii 3 blades might be strong, but Shen Bai was still able to utilize this unending and powerful sword chi to block it. The battle between the two of them had completely subverted everyone's understanding of the 3-Flower Realm martial artists. There were also many 3-Flower Realm martial artists in the Mirror Lake Villa and the Hidden Sword Villa, but none of them had the strength of true chi that could compare to these two. With such a strong foundation, even a martial artist at the 5 Chi's origin realm might not be able to compare. Monsters to monsters. The reason why Chu Xiu could have such a strong foundation was not because of talent, but because of his own skills and fortuitous encounters. When it came to talent, Chu Xiu was actually very mediocre. But whether it was the Xiantian skill, the glazed golden silk goo, or the great primordial chaos technique that he obtained later, these things had accumulated Chu Xiu's talent step by step, accumulating step by step to the current terrifying level. But Shen Bai was the exact opposite. His innate talent was already extremely astonishing. Furthermore, he was personally taught by Lu Zongyuan in the Azure Water Sword sect. Outsiders couldn't imagine what kind of life he had been living for the past 10 years. They had basically eliminated all temptations from the outside world. Other than ascetic cultivation, there was only ascetic cultivation. They were almost the same as the ascetic cultivators of the Buddhist sections. Relying on his talent and hard work to build up his foundation, he was not inferior to Chu Xiu. At this moment in the vast sword aura storm, Chu Xiu received the demonic chi from the Avicii Dao's 3 sabers into his body. He even burst out with the power of his blood-refined divine dipper and directly used his strength to clash against Shen Bai's sword aura. In the past, Chu Xiu actually liked to use strength to suppress others. Because no matter if it was a martial artist of the same rank or a martial artist that was stronger than him, the accumulation of strength was actually inferior to him. But now he had finally met his match. The Azure Water Sword Sect's majestic sword aura was displayed to the extreme by Shen Bai, and Chu Xiu was actually unable to break through for a moment. Amidst the sword aura, Shen Bai said with an expressionless face, "I said before, you can't beat me. You have cultivated an evil demonic Tao cultivation technique. Although the explosive power is indeed astonishing, how long can you last? In the end, I don't need to make a move to kill you. You will die from the backlash of that demonic Tao." Chu Xiu suddenly raised his head and revealed a smear of radiance in his eyes. "Who told you that I only know demonic arts? Using the right to counter the strange and using the strange to counter the right." Chu Xiu's martial Tao actually didn't have a fixed path. What he pursued was the ultimate destructive power. As long as he could kill people, it didn't matter what martial Tao he used. If this didn't work, then he would change to another type. Chu Xiu, who was originally surrounded by demonic chi, formed the inner lion seal to suppress himself. Then he quickly blasted out a fist seal. In a split second, the radius of several feet around him was entangled by the astral chi. It was like a large net, sealing the field and freezing the space. Formation word formula: Wisdom Fist Seal. Shen Bai's majestic sword aura seemed to be in slow motion within the range of the Wisdom Fist Seal. It was entangled by Chu Xiu's astral chi and imprisoned within. Chu Xiu's figure took advantage of this opportunity to shatter the majestic astral chi in front of him. His hand formed the great Vajra wheel seal and directly collided with Chu Xiu's astral chi. Shen Bai frowned. He had never seen Chu Xiu in action before. He had never experienced this mystical fast slow 9 words formula before. Freezing the space like a field actually broke his sword aura. Furthermore, this Chu Xiu was actually proficient in close combat with bare hands. Didn't he use a saber? Crossing his sword in front of him, Xinbai's sword edge instantly produced a layer of dense icicle-small swords. It was like a storm of hidden weapons blasting towards Chu Xiu. Over the years, Xinbai had learned all of the Azure Water Sword sect's techniques and sword manuals. Apart from their Azure Water Sword sect's secret Azure Water Sword Sutra, the ice-condensing sword technique he was currently using was the most proficient sword art. Fusing astral chi with sword chi, condensing the water vapor in the air into a sword. Although it was powerful and unpredictable, the requirements for the control of sword chi and astral chi were very harsh. In the entire Azure Water Sword sect, no one was willing to cultivate such a time-consuming and laborious technique that was extremely difficult to master. But Xinbai was exceptionally gifted. In addition, he had been diligently cultivating for more than 10 years. His state of mind was already considered very calm, which was why he was able to meticulously control sword chi and astral chi and was able to easily master this technique. Every tiny icicle was a sword chi, but under Chu Xiu's great Vajra wheel seal, a glaring Buddha light burst forth. The might of the Vajra demon subduing Vajra was revealed, and those icicles melted one after another. The fist seal landed on Xinbai's sword edge and immediately let out a loud clang. Xinbai was pushed back a step. Chu Xiu's eyes narrowed. This Xinbai was actually using a rank 6 artifact weapon. It seemed like Lu Gongyuan truly doted on this disciple of his. Sometimes, even a great expert at the unity of heaven and man realm wasn't qualified to use a rank 6 artifact weapon. At this moment, Chu Xiu's figure didn't have the slightest bit of pause. After the Great Vajra Wheel Seal forced Xinbai back, he consecutively used 3 more Great Vajra Wheel Seals. Each time he used his full strength. The 3 fist seals directly forced Xinbai to take 3 steps back, and the crushing loss of self-control was undoubtedly revealed. The exchange between Chu Xiu and Xinbai caused everyone present to exclaim in admiration. The strength of these 2 individuals was enough to show disdain for everyone. However, from the looks of it, Chu Xiu was still a notch stronger. That incomparably firm and ferocious fist seal, no one would feel good if they were to receive it head-on. Although Xinbai was strong, he was currently being suppressed by Chu Xiu. But before everyone could finish exclaiming in admiration, the moment Xinbai took a step back, a glaring divine radiance burst out from his sword. Xinbai's entire body's astral chi gathered into this sword, but it didn't dissipate. In an instant, the sword chi soared into the sky. That sword seemed to be able to shatter mountains and break rivers. The sword intent was astonishing. Seeing this sword, Qing Tingfeng's expression suddenly changed. He whispered in horror, Lu Gongyuan actually taught his drowning river sword intent to Xinbai. Is he crazy? Or does he really think that Xinbai is his Azure Water Sword sect's only hope? Qing Tingfeng was very familiar with the sword that Xinbai displayed. It was the drowning river sword that made Lu Gongyuan famous in the past. At that time, Qing Tingfeng hadn't reached the martial Dao Master realm yet. In front of Lu Gongyuan he was just a junior. That sword left a very deep impression on him. Most importantly, this sword wasn't a sword art at all. It was a type of sword intent. Lu Gongyuan had spent his entire life learning the sword, and he displayed the pinnacle sword after his comprehension of the sword Dao to the extreme. This wasn't something that could be passed down through words or explanations. It was very easy to learn this sword. As long as Lu Gongyuan demonstrated the charm of this sword on the spot, it would be fine. Only when the user personally imparted the charm would one be able to comprehend this type of sword intent. However, Lu Gongyuan hadn't made a move for more than 10 years. He was now old and his lifespan was coming to an end. This drowning river sword consumed a lot of energy when he was at his peak. Now that he was no longer at his peak, it was imaginable what kind of price Lu Gongyuan had to pay. It was basically his lifespan. At this moment in the battlefield, Xinbai, who had used this sword, said coldly, I miscalculated. I thought I had already overestimated you, but now it seems that I have still underestimated you. This sword was not originally prepared for you. It is your honor to be able to see it now. From the very beginning, Xinbai said that Chu Xiu was just a stepping stone for him. His true target was the top 10 of the Longhu list. His trump card, Drowning River Sword, was also prepared for them. But when they actually fought, Xinbai realized that Chu Xiu's strength was somewhat beyond his imagination. God knows how Chu Xiu cultivated to be able to accumulate such a deep foundation in just a few years. In any case, it couldn't be innate talent. If Chu Xiu was truly talented, then the Azure Water Sword sect wasn't an idiot. They wouldn't have ignored such a prodigy in the Wei County. By then Lu Gongyuan wouldn't have accepted Xinbai as his last disciple but Chu Xiu. Therefore, after seeing Chu Xiu's strength foundation, Shunbai made a decisive move and immediately used his drowning river sword to end this battle. It wasn't prepared for me? You will know in a while. You should have prepared a trump card for me. This is Lu Gongyuan's sword intent, not yours. Lu Gongyuan was able to use this sword to drown the river in the past, but you can't. Chu Xiu welcomed the sword with astonishing might. With every step he took, the demonic aura around him surged. In the end, his entire body was completely enveloped by the boundless demonic aura of hatred. However, within the demonic aura, Chu Xiu's figure was like an evil god. Not only did he exude a demonic aura filled with hatred, but there was also a hint of divinity. Avicii Hell Eternal Downfall. The Avicii Dao Three Blades was originally the blade of hell with the Avicii Hell as its true intent. Anyone who committed the 5 sins would be thrown into the Avicii Hell, never to be reincarnated. The last blade of the Avicii Dao Three Blades was the true intent of transforming into the god of hell, the blade of judgment for all sins in the world. Chapter 249. The Avicii Three Blades was a cultivation method that harmed both others and oneself, and very few people had ever cultivated it to the extreme. However, Chu Xiu relied on the glazed golden threads gu, the Buddhist cultivation method that he cultivated, and his willpower to forcefully suppress it. Finally, he cultivated this cultivation method to the extreme and slashed out the last blade, which was also a blade that truly contained a trace of the martial path's true meaning. At the moment when Chu Xiu slashed out the last blade, he seemed to have really transformed into the god of the underworld, judging the sins of the world. Gods had no emotions and were part of the operation of the rules of heaven and earth. Therefore, at the moment when Chu Xiu slashed out the last blade, his mind was actually impacted by this force to the point that there were no emotions. Only the demonic blade in his hand still slashed out with a powerful force. Fortunately, when Chu Xiu slashed out the blade, he used the internal lion seal to suppress himself, and the glazed golden threads gu also released a force in time to help Chu Xiu resist the backlash of this last blade. Otherwise, the impact of this last blade would have directly turned Chu Xiu into a madman. No wonder in the original plot, almost no one could cultivate the Avicii Three Blades to the extreme. Even if they really succeeded, that person would become a madman who only knew how to kill. Under the impact of such a powerful demonic aura, it would be strange if one did not go crazy. The suicide blade technique lived up to its reputation. At this moment, when Chu Xiu's blade fell, the strange man shrouded in a black robe below the stage showed a strange look in his eyes. Since the decline of the demonic path, how long had it been since he had seen such a terrifying demonic blade? Tong Kaitai and Xiahou Wujiang, who were sitting below, also had complicated expressions. Tong Kaitai had always looked crazy before, but this time, his expression was solemn. Last time when he fought with Chu Xiu, he could feel that there was something in Chu Xiu's heart that was attracting him. Although he did not know what it was very tempting. Tong Kaitai could guarantee that as long as he could swallow Chu Xiu's heart, his cultivation would definitely soar, and the benefits would be limitless. Now that he saw Chu Xiu slashing out with his saber, although he still had the thought of devouring Chu Xiu's heart, he completely gave up on the idea of doing so. Just based on this blade from Chu Xiu, he was afraid that he would lose his life before he could get Chu Xiu's heart. Xiahou Wujiang had the same feeling. Even though he was so far away, he could feel the terror of Chu Xiu's blade. Most importantly, he could feel that this blade could restrain the Xiahou clan. Xiahou's spirit control art affected the opponent's spirit and primordial spirit. Aside from the same primordial spirit secret art, the only things that could restrain this secret art were the extremely mighty Buddhist martial arts and Chu Xiu's extremely evil demonic martial arts. Xiahou Wujiang's left hand subconsciously played with a warm jade ring on his right hand. He did not care whether he could win first place in the God Weapon Conference or not, but this Chu Xiu was on the side of that trash Mo Tianlin. He did not want to see Mo Tianlin's friend win first place. Xiahou Wujiang's left hand subconsciously played with a warm jade ring on his right hand. He did not care whether he could win first place in the God Weapon Conference or not, but just now this Chu Xiu was on the side of that trash Mo Tianlin. He did not want to see Mo Tianlin's friend win first place just like that. The people below the stage had their own thoughts, but in such a short moment, a violent impact broke out on the stage. The black blade seemed to have been slashed out from hell, and Shunbai's sword was also shockingly powerful. When the two collided, there was a sudden burst of shocking waves. Even the arena began to tremble, and the light of the formation continued to shine as if it was going to crack at any moment. Seeing this scene, even Mo Yezi was a little worried that the arena would be directly destroyed by them. After all, when the Mirror Lake Villa built the arena, it was built according to the impact of the three Flower Realm warriors. Even after the construction was completed, the disciples of the Mirror Lake Villa were still thinking that their efforts this time would probably be in vain. 3 Flower Realm warriors on the Longhu list should not have come. In the end, not only did 4 3 Flower Realm warriors come, but they also directly exploded with combat power that far exceeded that of a 3 Flower Realm warrior. The arena was almost unable to withstand it. While Chu Xiu and Shen Bai were fiercely fighting, the formation on the arena had already been activated, continuously channeling the sharp chi of the two into the furnace. When the warriors fought before, the scale was too small, and their strength was also a little weak, so they basically did not provide much chi of sharpness. Now that Chu Xiu and Shen Bai were fighting so fiercely, it was already far more than the previous people. Everyone could clearly see that the flames in the furnace had completely turned silver, and the embryo that was previously just a liquid had now begun to change shape, becoming like a blade or a sword. Only then did everyone understand why only the winner of the God Armament Conference could be recognized by the God Armament. It was not that the God Armament had a shape as soon as it was born, but that only the strongest could give the God Armament a shape. The sharp chi of others was just nourishment. At this time on the arena, the violent explosion of chi continued to be heard. Countless chi of sword was flying and shattering. Shen Bai's figure did not move, but Chu Xiu was surrounded by a monstrous devil chi, but his face was frighteningly pale. Forming a seal with one hand, a golden Buddha's light bloomed from Chu Xiu's body. The powerful power of the inner lion was constantly suppressing the devil chi in his body. Finally, the devil chi in his body was suppressed, but there was still blood flowing from the corner of Chu Xiu's mouth. This was not caused by the demonic aura's backlash, but the power of Shen Bai's river-sinking sword just now was too strong. After all, this was the powerful sword essence that Lu Gongyuan had used to become famous in Jianghu. Although it did not belong to Shen Bai, as long as Shen Bai could learn a layer of its charm, the power would be terrifying enough. The 3 blades of Avici shattered the sword, but it wasn't able to shatter the sword will. It caused Chu Xiu's internal organs to be shaken, and he suffered some injuries. Seeing the scene of Chu Xiu vomiting blood, everyone was stunned. They looked at the unharmed Shen Bai and thought, did Chu Xiu lose this match? Even Mo Tianlin muttered, this azure water sword sex Shen Bai is actually so terrifying. Even Brother Chu was defeated by him? Mo Tianlin had seen Chu Xiu make a move several times. When was it not an earth-shattering suppression? Even Mo Tianlin admitted that not only was he not a match for Chu Xiu in the same rank, but even if his cultivation caught up to Chu Xiu in the future, he would still not be a match for Chu Xiu. In the end, Chu Xiu was injured in the battle with Shen Bai. Shen Bai's strength was a little too terrifying. At this moment, Luo Feiheng squinted his eyes and looked at the stage. The fight is not over yet, what's the hurry? Who told you that Chu Xiu will definitely lose? Just as Luo Feiheng finished speaking, Shen Bai gently lifted his sword. The 6th revolution artifact in his hand suddenly shattered on the stage. Shen Bai was stunned. He looked at his long sword with disbelief in his eyes. His falling rain sword was the sword that his master used when he was young. It was given to him by Lu Gongyuan when he was apprenticed to Lu Gongyuan. Shattered? With the Avici devil chi entering his body, Chu Xiu's attack was not aimed at Shen Bai, but at the sword in his hand. The fallen rain sword was Lu Gongyuan's sword in the past. Although it was not a divine armament, he had nurtured a trace of his own aura on it. In fact, when Lu Gongyuan executed the sword sinking into the river at his peak, he had used the fallen rain sword. The reason why Shen Bai was able to successfully execute the drowning river sword was partly due to the falling rain sword. The power of the Avici 3 blades erupted. Chu Xiu was confident that he could block the river-sinking sword, but he was not confident that he could seriously injure Shen Bai. Therefore, the moment he attacked, Chu Xiu changed his target and poured all the Avici devil chi into his opponent's falling rain sword. A 6th revolution artifact that had been passed down for hundreds of years finally shattered under Chu Xiu's blade. What else could a swordsman use if he lost his sword? Chu Xiu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and walked directly toward Shen Bai with his blade. Shen Bai, you are indeed very strong. Among the younger generation, you can be said to be the strongest person I have ever met. Chu Xiu's words made Tong Kaitai and Xiahou Wujiang's faces darken. Did Chu Xiu mean that they were not as good as Shen Bai? Of course they might be stronger than Shen Bai, but Chu Xiu had only fought with them to test their strength. Based on the strength they showed in the test, they were indeed not as strong as Shen Bai. Chu Xiu slashed out with the red sleeve blade in his hand. The blood-refined divine aura was dazzling with a strong killing intent. Unfortunately, you have chosen the wrong opponent. You have been enduring for more than 10 years. Even when I appeared in Wei County last time, you did not make a move. Why don't you continue to endure? As his voice fell, the saber aura slashed out with a strong killing intent. This saber was a killer move and Chu Xiu did not hold back at all. The hatred between him and Shen Bai could be considered as irreconcilable. Chu Xiu had no qualms about killing Shen Bai now. As for the Azure Water Sword sect, Chu Xiu did not put them in his eyes. Just a sect that was about to decline. Once Lu Gongyuan died, the Azure Water Sword sect would definitely be kicked out of the 7 sects and 8 factions. In Wei County, the Azure Water Sword sect might still have some strength, but in the pugilistic world their influence was almost zero. With the strength of the Guanzhong torture room, they could completely disregard the Azure Water Sword sect. Just as Chu Xiu's saber aura fell, the conceit in Shen Bai's eyes was no longer there, but it was more of unwillingness. He was obviously talented, but he was trapped in the sect for more than 10 years before he was allowed to roam the pugilistic world. For the past 10 years, Shen Bai was able to endure everything he had to endure. It was to become famous in the pugilistic world and to carry forward the Azure Water Sword sect. In fact, in the beginning, everything went according to his plan. Among martial artists of the same rank, the Three-Flower Realm was already rare. Bai Wuji, who was quite famous in the northern Yen, could not withstand a single blow from him. This time it was time for him to become famous. But the only person Shen Bai miscalculated was Chu Xiu. A person that he originally used as a stepping stone had now become a tiger blocking his way. This was something that Lu Gongyuan did not expect back then. Chapter 250. An intense unwillingness filled Shen Bai's heart. Was his first step into the martial world going to end just like this? Shen Bai wasn't willing, his master wasn't willing, the entire Azure Water Sword sect wasn't willing. Shen Bai was shouldering too many things. He was shouldering the rise and fall of an entire sect. This might be a responsibility and motivation for Shen Bai, but it was also a pressure. Now that he was facing defeat, Shen Bai could choose to endure the humiliation and beg for Hidden Sword Villa's help and retreat unscathed. After all, Hidden Sword Villa didn't wish for a life-and-death battle on the stage from the start. But he, Shen Bai, was the first to propose a battle with Chu Xiu. If he were to go back on his words, where would his face be? This was something Shen Bai couldn't accept. Under this pressure, Shen Bai didn't retreat. His entire body's dipper chi gathered on his right arm. His left hand slashed across his right arm, and the sharp dipper chi actually forcefully cut open a huge wound on his right arm. Fresh blood gushed out, but it didn't scatter. Instead, under the control of the dipper chi, it transformed into a long sword that was completely forged with fresh blood. Using blood to form a sword. This move wasn't the Azure Billow Sword sect's cultivation technique, but an evil attack that a senior of the Azure Billow Sword sect found after killing a demon Dao martial artist. Using dipper chi to control and using one's own blood to form a sword, it could be said to be extremely evil. But the complete version of this technique should be used in conjunction with a martial art that could absorb the opponent's chi and blood. This way, after expending one's own blood to kill the opponent, one would be able to recover a little. But now that Shen Bai was using this move, he was completely risking his life. As a disciple of a major sect, it was necessary to learn 1 or 2 trump cards that could be used for desperate or escape. With Shen Bai's personality, he wouldn't run for his life. Hence, he chose to use this desperate blood to form a sword technique. Evil Dao techniques might be evil and had too many side effects, but there was no need to doubt its prowess. The dipper chi wrapped around the blood sword, and Shen Bai's entire right arm was completely dyed red with fresh blood. Contrasting with his pale complexion, it looked extremely evil. Chu Xiu's expression remained unchanged as he formed the great Vajra wheel seal with his hand. A dazzling golden light suddenly bloomed from Chu Xiu's hand, making Chu Xiu look like a Buddhist Vajra that could subdue demons. This scene made everyone slightly speechless. They hadn't forgotten Chu Xiu's demonic aura just now. If they hadn't known that Chu Xiu was from the Guanzhong torture room and was even an inspector of the Guanzhong torture room, someone might have tried to exterminate the demon. On the other hand, Shen Bai's sword chi had been rampaging. When he was fighting against Chu Xiu, it was like a young swordsman fighting against a demon. But now the situation was reversed. Chu Xiu was using a righteous Buddhist technique, while Shen Bai was using an evil demonic technique. It was as if a Buddhist monk was subduing demons. The great Vajra wheel seal collided with Shen Bai's blood sword. Half of Shinbai's rich qi and blood were instantly shattered by the great Vajra wheel seal. However, it strangely extracted a part of Shinbai's blood extraction power to replenish it. It slashed straight at Chushio as if it was unscathed. The sword of blood was Shinbai's trump card. If it could be so easily restrained by Chushio, then he might as well not cultivate it. However, after extracting a part of qi and blood, Shinbai's face became even paler. With the loss of qi and blood, even if he won this round, his vitality would be greatly damaged. Of course, the most important thing was that Chushio would not give Shinbai a chance. The moment the blood sword was about to hit him, Chushio formed the outer lion seal with his hand. As his fingers tapped on the seal, Buddhist chants exploded like thunder, causing the entire arena to tremble. Shinbai's mind suddenly went blank when he was hit by the outer lion seal. All he could hear was the sound of Buddhist chants. This caused his body to involuntarily pause for a moment. When he regained his clarity of mind, he was met with Chushio's eyes. His eyes were as deep as an abyss, constantly pulling Shinbai's mental strength into them. Soul extinguishing and destroying technique. In the face of a warrior of the same level, the soul extinguishing and destroying technique was not as overbearing as the Xiahou clan's imperial spirit technique. However, Shinbai's state of mind had suffered a heavy blow, and he was no longer as confident and tenacious as before. Most importantly, after Shinbai used the blood sword technique, his vital energy had been severely depleted. Mental secret techniques would be discounted in the face of a warrior with a strong vital energy. Now that Shinbai had depleted his vital energy, the power of the great technique of extinguishing sky and destroying earth extinguishing soul transfer was 30% stronger. In the blink of an eye, under the control of Chushio's soul extinguishing and destroying technique, Shinbai's mental strength seemed to have fallen into an abyss. He could no longer control his gang energy. The blood sword condensed from gang energy on his right arm dissipated with a loud bang, and fresh blood splattered all over the arena. His blood sword technique had been easily broken by Chushio. The demonic technique of blood sword technique caused Shinbai to awaken from the control of the soul extinguishing and destroying technique. However, at this moment, his face was extremely pale, and he could no longer condense a second blood sword. What welcomed him was the shockingly powerful Great Vajra Wheel Seal from Chushio. Shinbai subconsciously waved his hand, wanting to burst out sword chi to defend himself. However, in the eyes of Chushio, the sword chi was extremely fragile. It was directly blasted away by Chushio's Great Vajra Wheel Seal. Even Shinbai's arms were directly smashed into pieces, twisting and breaking. Seeing this scene, the crowd shook their heads. The outcome had been decided. Shinbai had lost. When Shinbai had first appeared, he had been extremely domineering. As soon as he arrived, he had seriously injured Bai Wuji with a single move, displaying his terrifying cultivation. In fact, with just that sword alone, it was enough to make him famous in the God Weapon Conference. Furthermore, the strength that Shinbai had displayed on the arena stage was extremely terrifying, especially that river-sinking sword. It was completely qualified for Shinbai to be ranked within the top 10 of the Dragon and Tiger leaderboard. Unfortunately, Shinbai had chosen the wrong opponent, causing his glory to last for less than 2 hours. Of course, after this God Weapon Conference, Shinbai would also become famous in the God Weapon Conference. However, he would be regarded as one of the battle achievements of Chushio. His reputation would be known throughout the God Weapon Conference, and he would appear as a loser. It was a pity that the Azure Billow Sword sect had painstakingly nurtured an elite that could be ranked in the forefront of the God Weapon Conference. In the end, he didn't even have the chance to shine for long before he was defeated. On the stage, after Chushio's Great Vajra Wheel Seal blasted Shinbai away, his figure didn't stop. Instead, he chased after Shinbai and landed a palm strike. He was actually still trying to kill Shinbai. Chushio's grudge with Shinbai couldn't be resolved. Chushio had killed Shinbai's younger brother. Moreover, the Azure Billow Sword sect had also participated in the pursuit of Chushio. Chushio had no intention of reconciling with the Azure Billow Sword sect. Since that was the case, why didn't he go all out and kill Shinbai right here and now? Everyone present had more or less understood Chushio's style of doing things. When he made such a move, no one present was surprised. Most of the martial artists in the God Martial sect would abide by the rules of leaving a way out for others to meet in the future. But when did Chushio follow the rules? He dared to kill the divine martial sect's Yen Huainan's most beloved daughter. He dared to cripple the elite disciple of the Sword King City's previous generation. What else wouldn't Chushio do? Therefore, everyone was used to him wanting to cripple Shinbai on the spot. On the contrary, if Chushio showed mercy, then they would be surprised. When Qing Tingfeng saw Chu Xiu's action, he couldn't help but frown. Shen Bai didn't have the slightest ability to resist, but Chu Xiu still wanted to be ruthless. Wasn't his murderous nature a little too much? Shen Bai might have mentioned to Chu Xiu earlier that life and death would be disregarded on the stage, but after seeing Shen Bai execute Lu Gongyuan's river-sinking sword, Qing Tingfeng knew that Shen Bai was the future hope of the Azure Water Sword sect. If Shen Bai died here today, Lu Gongyuan might come looking for trouble with the Hidden Sword Villa. Lu Gongyuan's reputation in the pugilistic world was actually quite good, and he wasn't an unreasonable person. But the problem was that even the last hope of their sect's revival had been killed by someone else. Perhaps even the most reasonable person would become unreasonable. The Hidden Sword Villa wasn't afraid of the Azure Water Sword sect. Even without the Villa Lord, Qing Tingfeng wasn't afraid of Lu Gongyuan. But Lu Gongyuan was already at the end of his lifespan. A barefooted person wasn't afraid of someone wearing shoes. If Lu Gongyuan really vented his anger on the Hidden Sword Villa because of this matter, it would be troublesome. Therefore Qing Tingfeng could only sigh and said, "Chu, where it is possible to forgive, one should forgive." Stop. Chu Xiu heard Qing Tingfeng's words, but he didn't have the slightest intention to stop. Instead he rushed towards Shen Bai at an even faster speed. Last time when he wanted to kill Yan Tingting he was stopped by Xiao Baiyu. That was because Xiao Baiyu owed Yan Huainan a favor and had to protect Yan Tingting. Even if Qing Tingfeng wanted to kill Yan Tingting he couldn't. Hence Qing Tingfeng gave Xiao Baiyu face. But this time it was on the stage. Previously, everyone agreed that life and death would be disregarded on the stage. Now that Shen Bai was defeated, Qing Tingfeng wanted to go back on his words. Wasn't this favoring Shen Bai? Do you still want your dignity as a martial Dao Grandmaster? Do you still want the Hidden Sword Villa's reputation? Moreover, he was here on behalf of the Guanzhong torture room. If Qing Tingfeng was unfair, would Guanxiu watch as her men were bullied outside? Your Hidden Sword Villa is afraid of Kanglan Sword sect coming to find trouble, but aren't you afraid of the Guanzhong torture room coming to find trouble with you? In terms of reason, Chu Xiu was truly fearless. In public he was the one in the right in this matter. Hence, Chu Xiu didn't bother about Qing Tingfeng's words and directly struck his palm at Shen Bai. This time he was going to completely end this karma. Seeing that Chu Xiu actually treated his words as air, Qing Tingfeng couldn't help but snort coldly. A sword finger descended and directly streaked across the void. It arrived in front of Shen Bai even though it was launched later. It didn't attack Chu Xiu but protected in front of Shen Bai. But at this moment Chu Xiu's hand formed the wisdom fist seal. The force of circumference was useless against heaven and earth. Bursting out with all his strength, the aura chi pulled the sword chi. Although it only pulled the sword chi a little bit, it allowed Chu Xiu's great purple sun hand to accurately imprint on Shen Bai's dantian. Chapter 251. Needless to say, the power of a vicious martial technique like the sky-extinguishing earth-annihilating violet sun palm was needless to say. When Chu Xiu's palm landed on Shen Bai's dantian, he spat out a mouthful of purplish-black blood and was thrown out of the ring. He fainted. However, Chu Xiu did not follow up with another attack because Qing Tingfeng had already appeared in front of Shen Bai and was looking at Chu Xiu with an unfriendly expression. Everyone present also looked at Chu Xiu with their mouths agape. To be honest, they had never seen such a bold person who actually dared to injure a martial arts master in front of him. Qing Tingfeng pulled open Shen Bai's torn clothes. On Shen Bai's dantian, there was a purplish-black palm print. It seemed to be growing in his flesh. He could feel an extremely evil fire burning Shen Bai's meridians. Shen Bai's dantian was already crippled after being struck by such a palm. It was no different from being dead. In fact, with the arrogance and conceit that Shen Bai had displayed just now, Qing Tingfeng was worried that Shen Bai would commit suicide after waking up because he couldn't bear such a thing. After injecting a stream of inner force into Shen Bai's body to stop the purple sun demonic flame in Shen Bai's body, Qing Tingfeng looked at Chu Xiu and said coldly with an unfriendly expression, "Didn't you hear me asking you to stop just now? Chu Xiu, how dare you? Do you really think that just because you have the Guanzhong torture room behind you, you can look down on the Hidden Sword Villa?" Chu Xiu calmly cupped his hands and said, "Senior Qing, I did not mean that. However, swords have no eyes and fists and feet have no heart. Before we started fighting, it was Shen Bai who first proposed a life-and-death battle. Of course I would not refuse. Moreover, Senior Qing, as you can see, I cultivate a part of the demonic arts. So once I unleash my true power I can't control myself. Just now, I really wanted to stop, but that palm still fell involuntarily. This is something that all the martial artists present can attest to, just like the battle in front of Watercloud Temple. I just wanted to hold back, but I couldn't control myself. If I've offended you, please forgive me, Senior Cheng. Hearing Chu Xiu's sophistry, everyone present was speechless. Quite a few of them had seen the battle in front of the Watercloud Monastery. During that battle, Chu Xiu might have really gone crazy. When he started killing, he didn't care about anything else. He didn't even care about his own safety. Instead, he killed so many of his enemies that they were terrified. But when Chu Xiu attacked just now, even an idiot could see that Chu Xiu was absolutely sober. If you can't hold back, can you still use the Wisdom Fist Seal to deflect Qing Tingfeng's sword chi before attacking him? This was clearly intentional. However, although Chu Xiu's argument was sophistry, it was reasonable, and he had lowered himself sufficiently. Although Qing Tingfeng was angry that Chu Xiu had ignored his words, what else could he say? He didn't want Chu Xiu to kill Shen Bai because he didn't want to invite trouble. As a result, Shen Bai was already crippled and living a life worse than death. If Qing Tingfeng insisted on punishing Chu Xiu with sufficient reason, he could. A martial Dao master didn't need any reason to teach a junior martial artist a lesson. But the problem was that if he did so, it would be equivalent to offending the Guanzhong torture room. Moreover, the Azure Water Sword sect wouldn't remember his favor, so what benefits would he get by doing so? If he knew this was the case, he might as well not say anything and let Chu Xiu and Shen Bai kill each other. It would save him the trouble of taking off his pants and farting. It would be an unnecessary move that wouldn't be pleasing to both sides. Therefore, Qing Tingfeng could only let out a cold snort and said, "I will personally be the referee for the next matches. No one should think about going overboard. If you go crazy, again think about the consequences yourself." Chu Xiu smiled and cupped his hands. "Senior Cheng, don't worry. I will control myself." After finishing his statement, Chu Xiu leisurely walked down the stage and threw a few recuperation pills into his mouth, as if he was chewing on jelly beans. He might have crippled Shen Bai, but he also expended a lot of energy. Especially when he used the Wisdom Fist Seal to deflect Qing Tingfeng's sword chi, it almost consumed all his internal force. A martial Dao master's attack wasn't something that the current Chu Xiu could withstand, even if it was a small sword chi. With Chu Xiu's strength, he would not be able to block even a casual sword chi from Qing Tingfeng. Therefore, the only thing he could do was to use the power of the Wisdom Fist Seal's condensed aura domain to teleport him away. When Chu Xiu returned to Mo Tianlin's side, Mo Tianlin looked at Chu Xiu and praised, "You've been in the limelight quite a bit today. To be honest, you're quite courageous to actually dare to challenge a martial Dao master." Luo Feiheng also looked at Chu Xiu with a strange gaze and said, "In the past my dad always said that I was a deviant or something, but he never really punished me. But if I do something like you, I can guarantee that my dad will beat me to death." Although Xie Xiaolu didn't say anything, he also looked at Chu Xiu with the same gaze. Indeed, in the eyes of most martial artists, the dignity of a martial Dao master couldn't be challenged, but in the end, Chu Xiu dared to cripple Shen Bai in front of Qing Tingfeng after he called for him to stop. This was no longer something that could be described as courting death. In the eyes of most people, Chu Xiu's behavior was equivalent to courting death. Chu Xiu casually waved his hand and said, "I'm not an idiot, I wouldn't do this if it was under other circumstances. This God Weapon Conference is organized by the Hidden Sword Villa. If the Hidden Sword Villa takes the lead and doesn't follow the rules, then what's the point of this God Weapon Conference? Moreover, I'm in the right in this matter. If the Hidden Sword Villa dares to touch me, they'll be the ones losing face." Mo Tianlin and the others all shook their heads. Although that was what they said, there weren't many people who would actually dare to do such a thing. The battle between Chu Xiu and Shen Bai was extremely intense, and the sharp aura produced when the two of them fought was directly poured into the formation, even causing the embryo in the furnace to faintly condense into the shape of a knife. The shape was ferocious and sharp, and at a glance, it was obvious that it was not a good method. It was obvious that Chu Xiu was the most outstanding one in this God Weapon Conference. If Chu Xiu could maintain this state in the next battle, then he would definitely be the winner of this God Weapon Conference. At this time, everyone subconsciously looked at Xiahou Wujiang. Among these people, the only one who could compete with Chu Xiu was Xiahou Wujiang. Although Tong Kaitai was also in the Three-Flower Realm, no one was familiar with him. Moreover, Tong Kaitai had previously retreated from the hands of Chu Xiu, so everyone subconsciously thought that Tong Kaitai's strength was not as good as Chu Xiu's. At this time, Xiahou Wujiang also frowned. To be honest, after seeing Chu Xiu's attack, he was also a little uncertain. The Xiahou clan's imperial spirit technique followed a completely different path from normal martial arts. Without a real fight, he couldn't be sure if he could defeat Chu Xiu. Even if he took out all his trump cards, his chances of winning were no more than 50%. Of course, he could also choose not to fight. Although he couldn't win, at least he wouldn't lose, and he wouldn't lose face. Moreover, the people of the Xiahou clan almost never used weapons, so having a god weapon in hand didn't mean much. But the problem was that under such circumstances, even if he didn't fight, he would be ridiculed by some people for being afraid of Chu Xiu. Moreover, this Chu Xiu was actually on good terms with Mo Tianlin and dared to ruin his plans just now. If he didn't teach him a lesson, Xiahou Wujiang wouldn't be satisfied. At this time, the next group of people had already entered the arena. One of them was the black-robed man that Chu Xiu had been paying attention to before. His opponent was a martial artist at the peak of the physical invulnerability realm. The black-robed man was unknown, so his opponent certainly wouldn't give up just like that. The physical invulnerability realm martial artist glanced at the black-robed man and didn't recognize him. He was definitely a nobody, but he didn't care. He just waved the sword in his hand and said indifferently, "If you know what's good for you, take the initiative to admit defeat. You can save some energy." But the black-robed man suddenly laughed. His voice was full of disdain, which made the physical invulnerability realm martial artist angry. He snorted coldly and rushed forward with his sword. But at this time, the black-robed man suddenly opened his mouth and laughed strangely. "Don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame your own bad luck." As soon as he finished speaking, the black-robed man stretched out a hand. In an instant, endless demonic aura enveloped the physical invulnerability realm martial artist. Only a wail could be heard. The demonic aura seemed to penetrate through every pore, directly seeping into the martial artist's body and forcefully sucking away his vitality. Almost in an instant, the physical invulnerability realm martial artist turned into a dried corpse. At this moment, everyone was stunned, including the people from the Hidden Sword Villa. Because this batch of martial artists on the arena didn't have any fame, the crowd didn't even pay attention to them. Even the referee felt a little careless. In the end, before they could react, a scream came from the other side. One person had died. Wasn't this a little too fast? At this time, the faces of the people from the Hidden Sword Villa, especially Qing Tingfeng, darkened. Just now, he was the one who said that the others shouldn't go too far. In the end, as soon as he said that, someone killed someone in front of him. This was simply a slap to his face. Qing Tingfeng looked at the black-robed man and shouted, "Which sect are you from? Didn't you hear what I said just now? The God Weapon Conference is not a place for you to come and kill people. Do you really think that the Hidden Sword Villa is easy to talk to? Which sect are you from? Qing Tingfeng, don't you recognize me?" Qing Tingfeng frowned. He suddenly felt that something was wrong. But at this time, the aura of the black-robed man had begun to rise continuously. From the physical invulnerability realm to the 3 flowers above one's prominence, then to the 5 Qis unification, and finally to the martial arts master realm. A powerful demonic aura shot up into the sky. The black-robed man took off his hat, revealing an extremely ordinary face. However, that face seemed to be magic, quickly changing, and finally became the face of a cold middle-aged man. Under the holy sect, Shadow Demon Envoy, Sitali of the Phaseless Demon Sect. Qing Tingfeng, I've always remembered that sword of yours in the past. Situli smiled coldly at Qing Tingfeng, his eyes filled with intense killing intent. Chapter 252. Hearing the names of the Holy Sect and the Phaseless Demon Sect, everyone's expression suddenly changed. Even the people from the Hidden Sword Villa and the Mo family of the Mirror Lake Villa reacted the same way. The Holy Sect referred to the Kunlun Devil Cult, but it was just the name that the Kunlun Devil Cult called themselves. To the Kunlun Devil Cult, they did not think of themselves as demons. During the era when Dugu Weiwei dominated the pugilistic world, he once told the people of the Kunlun Devil Cult what was righteous and what was demonic. Why should the righteous path be higher than the demonic path? The so-called demonic path was just a name. As long as the Kunlun Devil Cult could suppress the world, then even if they were the demonic path, they could still become the supreme holiness and be worshipped by everyone in the world. Therefore, from then on, the Kunlun Devil Cult called themselves the Holy Sect. That was also the time when the Kunlun Devil Cult was at its peak. As for the Phaseless Demon Sect, it was also very famous. It was one of the 7 sects and 8 schools, but it was the best hidden one. Even now, no one in the pugilistic world knew where the Phaseless Demon Sect was. Furthermore, what made Phaseless Demon Sect famous in the pugilistic world was not their strength, but their loyalty to Kunlun Demon Sect. In the past, when Dugu Weiwei disappeared after the battle with Ning Xuanji, the entire Kunlun devil cult could be said to have fallen apart and was completely annihilated by the righteous path. However, back then there were not many people in the Kunlun devil cult. Those who could officially become the disciples of the Kunlun devil cult were the elites of the elites. In the past, the Kunlun devil cult was able to conquer the world by relying on countless vassals of the demonic path. For example, the North Plains Evil Pole Sect, the Southern Borders Moon-worshipping cult, and the Phaseless Demon Sect. They were all vassal sects under the Kunlun devil cult and were under the command of the Kunlun devil cult. However, after the Kunlun devil cult was annihilated, these vassal sects fled in all directions. Some even chose to kick them when they were down. The Phaseless Demon Sect was the most loyal. After hundreds of years, they were still loyal to the Kunlun devil cult. Their attitude had never changed. All these years, the Phaseless Demon Sect had been hiding underground because they had a secret technique that could perfectly conceal their aura. Furthermore, they could change their appearance and figure at will. Therefore, even if the righteous sects wanted to exterminate the Phaseless Demon Sect, they had never succeeded. At most, they had killed a few people, but it was not enough to greatly damage the strength of the Phaseless Demon Sect. In the past, when the Kunlun Demon Sect was at its peak, the Phaseless Demon Sect was in charge of gathering information. When the Kunlun devil cult was at its peak, the Phaseless Demon Sect was in charge of gathering information for the Kunlun devil cult. Take this Situli for example. Given his strength, he could easily become an elder or even the sect head of the Phaseless Demon Sect. However, he still addressed himself as the Shade Devil Envoy. This was enough to show his loyalty to the Kunlun Demon Sect. Cheng Tingfeng narrowed his eyes as he looked at Situli. You remembered this face. All these years, the Phaseless Demon Sect had been causing trouble in the dark. They took revenge on the righteous sects that attacked the Kunlun devil cult. They even took revenge on the vassal sects that hit the Kunlun devil cult when they were down. They were the traitors that they called traitors. Therefore, the Phaseless Demon Sect was not loved by anyone. As long as they showed their face, they would be hunted down. In the past, Cheng Tingfeng had also participated in the hunt for the people from the Phaseless Demon Sect. At that time, he had severely injured Situli. However, it was a pity that Situli had escaped. Cheng Tingfeng said coldly, "You bunch of rats from the Phaseless Demon Sect actually dare to appear again. Moreover, you even appeared in a place like the Divine Weapon Conference. You really don't know what's good for you. I let you escape in the past, but this time do you think you can escape? I didn't go to kill you, but you took the initiative to jump out and cause trouble. You really don't know what's good for you." Situli laughed and said in a sinister voice, "Cheng Tingfeng, I said it before. I will return that sword attack of yours sooner or later. Moreover, if I wasn't fully prepared, do you think I would appear here?" As soon as he finished speaking, a strong demonic aura suddenly erupted from the bodies of some of the martial artists who looked low-key and ordinary. The appearance of these martial artists changed and they all looked the same. Looked very strange. Most importantly, these people were extremely strong. Even the weakest among them had the strength of a physical invulnerability expert. A total of dozens of martial artists from the Phaseless Demon Sect jumped onto the stage and burst out their demonic chi without any scruples. This caused Cheng Tingfeng's face to change slightly. These fellows from the Phaseless Demon Sect were really hard to deal with. After such a long time, he actually didn't notice anything wrong. He actually let so many disciples from the Phaseless Demon Sect sneak in. If it was in the Hidden Sword Villa, he wouldn't be afraid of these disciples from the Phaseless Demon Sect. However, the problem was that this was the Mirror Lake Villa. This time, the Hidden Sword Villa was only here to host the Divine Weapon Conference. Therefore, they didn't bring too many disciples. Although they brought elites, there were only a dozen of them. As for the Mirror Lake Villa, these people were all descendants of Mo Yezi. Almost all of them were blacksmiths. They were in the same realm, but unfortunately none of them could fight. It was useless to count on them. Cheng Tingfeng's face darkened and he said coldly, "You want to kill me with just these few people? Wishful thinking. I think your Phaseless Demon Sect has been living too comfortably recently. When I return to the Hidden Sword Villa, I will definitely mobilize the power of the Hidden Sword Villa to kill your Phaseless Demon Sect." Situli said indifferently, "Don't flatter yourself too much. This time, the Phaseless Demon Sect spent so much effort not to kill you." Cheng Tingfeng's face changed slightly. "Then what are you trying to do?" Situli didn't directly answer Cheng Tingfeng's question. Instead, he sneered at the nervous young martial artists below the stage. Do you think that the Hidden Sword Villa put in so much effort to host this divine weapon conference to give you divine weapons for free? They actually want to use you to refine weapons. Everyone froze. Grandmaster Mo Yezi had already explained this to them earlier. He said that Grandmaster Mo Yezi had invented a new method of weaponsmithing that required the sharpness of their attacks to be used to forge the divine weapons. Although they had to act personally, in the end the divine weapons would still belong to them. In that case they wouldn't be at a disadvantage. Sitali sneered, "Do you really think the Hidden Sword Villa will be so kind? Do you know what material is used to refine the divine weapon in the furnace? It's the token of our holy church, the demonic order. You keep saying how good our holy church is, acting as if it's a taboo, but in the end, you're using our holy church's things to refine divine weapons. How hypocritical is that?" Everyone present had different expressions. To be honest, most of them didn't know what the demonic order was. However, in the past, the Kunlun devil cult dominated the world. To be able to be related to the Kunlun devil cult, it must be a treasure. Using it to refine divine weapons was normal. Of course, this kind of thing didn't sound good. Just like what Sitali said, it was a bit hypocritical. However, there were quite a number of disciples from the major sects present. If they were in Qin Wentian's shoes, they would do the same thing as well. It was just that they couldn't let others know about it. Wasting was not a good habit. Chu Xiu knew some of the truth because he also had that token. It should be a fragment of the demonic order. This thing really was related to the Kunlun devil cult. Looking at everyone's expression, Sitali sneered, "As expected, the so-called people from the large sects are all the same. However, what if I say that Mo Yezi and the people from the Hidden Sword Villa join hands to restore the demon sword longing yearning of our holy church's 3 great demon weapons?" Hearing this, everyone's expression changed abruptly. In the past, when the Kunlun devil cult dominated the world, there were 3 divine weapons that were the most famous. They were the demon blade, the demon sword, and the demon spear. Among them, the demon blade was the weapon of the cult's leader, Dugu Weiwei. It had long been lost without a trace. As for the remaining 2 demon weapons, they were in the hands of 2 of the 4 great demon sovereigns of the Kunlun devil cult. Among them, the demon sword Longing Yearning was also very famous in Jianghu. Although its name was very poetic and even gentle, it had harvested countless lives. It caused countless martial artists to lose their loved ones and teachers, and could only yearn alone. However, following the annihilation of the Kunlun devil cult, it was said that the demon sword Longing Yearning was also destroyed by the righteous experts. Why would Sitali say that this thing was in the hands of the Hidden Sword Villa, and that the Hidden Sword Villa wanted to restore it? Nonsense! Qing Tingfeng shouted angrily. In his hand, a long sword that was blooming with a soaring sword light was already unsheathed. Then, with a wave of his hand, the other martial artists of the Hidden Sword Villa immediately took action, not allowing Sitali to speak nonsense. However, Sitali sneered and said, "Don't be anxious. Later, even if you don't take action, I will. However, today I want to let the entire Jianghu see how hypocritical your Hidden Sword Villa is, and how greedy you are. Mo Guangyun, take action, what are you waiting for?" As Sitali's voice fell, a person from the Mirror Lake Villa quickly walked out. He drew on the formation, then immediately jumped to the side of the people from the Phaseless Demon Sect. The formation was activated again, and the mechanism on the ground turned, and another empty furnace appeared. However, what existed in this furnace was not an embryo, but a pitch-black slender sword. It was abnormally beautiful, and there were fine patterns on it, emitting a shocking demonic aura. However, at this time, the slender sword was covered in cracks, as if it would shatter with a light touch. Sitali sneered and said, "You all saw it. This so-called using the formation to forge a weapon is just a pretense. Although in the end, by borrowing your sharpness, they will indeed forge a divine weapon, but in reality, what they really want to restore is the demon sword Longing Yearning, that belongs to my holy sect." Chapter 253. The series of changes at the God Weapon Conference made everyone unable to react. It was supposed to be a God Weapon Conference for the geniuses of the younger generation. How did it turn into Hidden Sword Villa and Mo Yezi working together to restore the Kunlun devil cult's demon sword Longing Yearning? Demon weapons were not like other godly weapons. The demon sword Longing Yearning was a 9th transformation existence. The demonic nature within it was deeply rooted. Even if an ordinary martial artist obtained the Longing Yearning, if their willpower was not strong enough, they would be affected by the demon sword and turn into a demon that wreaked havoc in the martial world. What Hidden Sword Villa and Mo Yezi were doing was taboo in the martial world. Below the stage, a few martial artists from large sects questioned, "Senior Cheng, Grandmaster Mo Yezi, we need an explanation for this." Cheng Tingfeng snorted and gripped the sword in his hand tightly. He had no obligation to explain to these young martial artists. It would make more sense if the people behind them did. However, Mo Yezi sighed, "Demon weapons and godly weapons are all weapons. I only want to personally restore a 9th transformation weapon. Moreover, as long as I can borrow the sharpness to restore the demon sword, I will remove the demonic chi from the demon sword." By now, everyone had guessed that Hidden Sword Villa's reason for doing this was actually very simple. Hidden Sword Villa had a hobby of collecting famous swords. Although the Longing Yearning was a demon sword, it was still a 9th transformation godly weapon. Hidden Sword Villa did not know where they obtained the damaged demon sword, but they probably had this thought for a long time. As for Mo Yezi, it was just as he said, he did not have any selfish motives. However, as a weapon refinement grandmaster and one that was already old, he could not resist the temptation of personally restoring a 9 revolution weapon. That was why he agreed to the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa's request. After the divine weapon was completed, it would be taken away by the elites of the Jianghu. In the dark, they could use the sharpness of the weapon to restore the yearning sword and expel the demonic chi within it. However, they did not expect the phaseless demon sect to jump out and expose everything. Even if they managed to defeat the phaseless demon sect, it would definitely affect their reputation. Glancing at Mo Guangyun, Mo Yezi sighed, "Guangyun, you are my nephew. Among the younger generation of the Mo clan, your talent is one of the best. Why did you collude with the phaseless demon sect and do such a thing?" Mo Yezi had a son, but he dared to say that he cared more about Mo Guangyuan than his own son. He practically treated Mo Guangyuan as his successor. Now that Mo Guangyuan had betrayed him, Mo Yezi was not angry, only sad and confused. Mo Guangyuan lowered his head and didn't look at Mo Yezi. He simply said, "Uncle, you were the previous owner of the Divine Weapon Pavilion and a renowned Grandmaster Artificer. Logically speaking, as members of the Mo clan, we should also join the Divine Weapon Pavilion. But in the end, because of your so-called reputation, you forced us, the Mo clan's disciples, to stay in the Mirror Lake Manor. So what if he forged a top-notch weapon in a remote corner of the world? As weapon refiners, could it be that the weapons that we forge can only be covered in dust? No. Just like what you said, as a weapon refiner, personally witnessing the weapon that he forged transform into an even more powerful godly weapon, that is the greatest sense of accomplishment. Unfortunately, you taught me all of this, but you didn't give me the opportunity to use it. Even if you are no longer the owner of the Divine Weapon Pavilion, the Mo clan still cannot join the Divine Weapon Pavilion. I need to find a place to fulfill my ambition. 99% of the weapon refiners in the world are in the Divine Weapon Pavilion. Now that you don't allow us to join the Divine Weapon Pavilion, I have to change my method. Whether it is the righteous path or the demonic path, as long as they provide me with enough resources and opportunities, why should I refuse?" Hearing Mo Guangyuan's words, Mo Yezi was stunned. Then he smiled bitterly, "Do you really think that I don't want you to join the Divine Weapon Pavilion? I am protecting you. Do you think that anyone can enter the Divine Weapon Pavilion? Do you think that there would be less scheming between armament refiners? When I was the pavilion master, I did not allow you to join the Divine Weapon Pavilion because I was afraid of rumors. But after I retired from the underworld, I did not allow you to join the Divine Weapon Pavilion because I was afraid that something would happen to you. Even though I, Mo Yezi, am old, I still have the confidence to forge a 6th revolution precious weapon in a year. In the end, I retired from the underworld so quickly. Do you think I did it voluntarily?" Even an idiot could hear the meaning in Mo Yezi's tone. His retirement from the underworld was not voluntary, and it even involved some internal conflict within the Divine Weapon Pavilion. This was very interesting. Mo Guangyuan was also stunned. Obviously, he did not expect there to be such a hidden story. However, Mo Guangyuan only shook his head and said, "Uncle, you don't need to say any more. Now that I have helped the phaseless demon sect, there is no going back." Situli said indifferently, "All right, I have said everything that needs to be said. It is time to take action. The demon sword that belongs to my holy sect will naturally be kept by my holy sect. I still have to thank you for restoring the broken Xiang to this state. But there is no need for you to meddle. If my holy sect's demon sword was erased of its demonic chi, would it still be called a demon sword?" Situ Li and the people from the phaseless demon sect were waiting for this moment. The Xiang had already absorbed most of the sharp chi from the battle between Chu Xiu and Xin Bai. Although there were still cracks on it, it could be considered to have recovered. That was why Situli jumped out at this time. However, the martial artist who fought with him was unlucky. He was instantly killed by a martial Dao master. Cheng Tingfeng said to Mo Yezi, "Master Mo Yezi, take down the demon sword. I will cover you and kill your way out." The Mo clan's artificers from the Mirror Lake Manor couldn't be of any help, so they could only retreat with the demon sword. Kill your way out? You can't escape. Situli clapped his hands and in an instant, a large array rose into the sky outside the Mirror Lake Manor. A faint blue light enveloped the entire Mirror Lake Manor. This caused the expressions of everyone present to change, especially those who came to participate in the God Weapon Convention. Previously, when they found out that the people from the Phaseless Demon Sect were after the Demon Sword yearning, they heaved a sigh of relief. This was a grudge between the Phaseless Demon Sect and the Hidden Sword Villa. It had nothing to do with them. But now, the Phaseless Demon Sect used a formation to trap them here. God knows if this group of demons would kill them as well. Cheng Tingfeng turned to look at Mo Yezi and shouted angrily, "How many traitors did your Mirror Lake Manor have? You actually let the people from the Phaseless Demon Sect set up a formation outside?" Mo Yezi was also dumbfounded. Although he was the owner of the Mirror Lake Manor, he usually only refined weapons. Why would he care about so many things? Sidali sneered. For today they had prepared for a long time. Actually, this formation really had nothing to do with the Mirror Lake Manor. It was the content of the deal between the Phaseless Demon Sect and Prince and Lu Jiang Wenyuan. As the local tyrant of Eastern Qi, Jiang Wenyuan had many people under him. These people were all local martial artists of the Ji State Prefecture. When they went to the Mirror Lake Manor to buy weapons, they would leave behind a formation plate that had already been engraved. After going back and forth a few times, dozens of formation plates had quietly been left around the Mirror Lake Manor. Finally, they merged into this large formation. "Attack! Kill our way out!" Cheng Tingfeng shouted. Mo Yezi immediately took the demon sword from the furnace and followed Cheng Tingfeng out of the Mirror Lake Manor. "If you don't leave behind the demon sword of the Holy Church, none of you can think of leaving. How can we leave the things of the Holy Church in your hands?" Situli snorted coldly. The demon chi around him was monstrous. He took a step forward and appeared in front of Cheng Tingfeng. The boundless demon chi turned into a huge ghost claw that was more than 10 feet long and slammed towards Cheng Tingfeng. Cheng Tingfeng's eyes showed a touch of coldness. "I can defeat you in the past and I can do the same today. If it weren't for me worrying about the other disciples of the Hidden Sword Villa, do you think I would run away?" As his voice fell, the long sword in Cheng Tingfeng's hand was unsheathed. In an instant, the sword light soared into the sky, illuminating the entire Mirror Lake Manor. In an instant, the bright and magnificent sword light had torn the ghost claw apart. Cheng Tingfeng's overbearing sword chi was revealed. Situli said with a weird smile, "Making such a big movement, are you going to attract other real Pellet State Martial Dao Grand Master? Don't waste your energy. At this time, there is not even a Martial Dao Grand Master around the Ji State Prefecture. Xiao Baiyu came before and I was thinking about how to get rid of him. I didn't expect that he took the initiative to leave because of the matter between the boy of Guanzhong Torture Hall and the girl of Divine Force Sect, which saved me some effort." Everyone present subconsciously looked at Chu Xiu. Sidali was talking about Chu Xiu. This guy indirectly helped these Phaseless Demon Sect people. At this time, Chu Xiu stared blankly at the embryo that had not yet formed in the array. The demonic sword Everlasting Yearning was taken away by others, but this unformed demonic weapon was still here. Chu Xiu suddenly whispered to Mo Tianlin and others at this time, "Everyone do me a favor. I'm going to seize the unformed divine weapon. I owe everyone a favor this time." Mo Tianlin said in surprise, "The divine weapon is not formed yet, it's just an embryo. What do you want that thing for?" Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and said, "It's not formed now but it's not certain when we fight later. The array is still running. Even without Master Mo Yezi's control, the sharpness during the fight will continuously seep into it. In the end, this divine weapon may not be formed. Besides, I can also add some materials into it." Although Mo Tianlin didn't understand what Chu Xiu meant by adding materials, but if it wasn't for Chu Xiu, he would definitely be humiliated by Xiahou Wujiang in public, so Mo Tianlin directly nodded and agreed. Xia Xiaolu was the same. Chu Xiu was Lu Fengxian's good friend, and he even helped his best friend Mo Tianlin just now. There was no reason for him not to help. Luo Feihong, on the other hand, stretched and held the blood spear red kite in his hand. He said lazily, "It's not fun to just watch the fun at the God Weapon Convention. Count me in." Chapter 254. Under the ambush of the Phaseless Demon Sect, the entire Mirror Lake Villa was in chaos. The Phaseless Demon Sect originally came to take back the Demon Sword, Eternal Yearning. Not to mention the value of the sword itself. For a sect like the Phaseless Demon Sect that was still loyal to the Kunlun Devil cult, the sword itself was one of the symbols of the Kunlun Devil cult, so they had to take it back. Moreover, when Qing Tingfeng fought with Sita Li, he was shocked to discover that Sita Li, who he had defeated in the past, had now surpassed him in terms of cultivation and combat strength. Sita Li grinned and said, "Qing Tingfeng, do you think that you're the only one who has been cultivating for so many years? In the past, I was defeated by you, and ever since I returned to the Phaseless Demon Sect, I've been bitterly cultivating my devil arts. In the end, I managed to cultivate this demonic Phaseless Mystic technique to the large success stage. Now it's time for you to experience the might of my demonic Phaseless Mystic technique." As his voice fell, Sita Li waved his hand, and in an instant majestic demon chi directly enveloped Qing Tingfeng. In the envelopment of the demon chi, Qing Tingfeng's eyes were filled with illusions. There were tempting goddesses dancing, and there were also heavenly demons roaring. Below, there were also countless martial artists he had killed before turning into evil spirits and pouncing towards him. The Phaseless Demon Sect's Phaseless Demon technique was a very complicated demonic technique. It included several kinds of aura concealment or secret techniques to change forms. And when the demon formless mystic technique was cultivated to the extreme, it was an evil secret technique that could attract the opponent's inner demons and cause them to fall into an illusion. It was also considered one of the primordial spirit secret techniques. Qing Tingfeng coldly snorted and said, "Treacherous tricks." As his voice fell, he directly slashed out with his sword. In an instant, a powerful sword chi tore through the heaven and earth, destroying all the illusions. Sita Li's figure also appeared within it. Just as Qing Tingfeng was about to kill Sita Li's figure suddenly turned into hundreds and thousands of figures rushing towards Qing Tingfeng. Boundless demon chi enveloped him and he was still in that illusion. Qing Tingfeng reversed his meridians and spurted out a mouthful of blood. Only then did he manage to break away from the illusion of the Sky Demon Formless technique. Sita Li looked at Qing Tingfeng and said coldly, "Back then, that sword of yours made me recuperate for many years. Now this is just the interest." As he spoke, Sita Li charged forward again. The Phaseless Demon Sect and the Hidden Sword Villa were in a mess. At this moment, after receiving the promise from Mo Tianlin and the others, Chu Xiu stepped onto the stage and walked towards the embryo of the divine weapon. Everyone was stunned when they saw Chu Xiu's actions. What was he trying to do? Xiahou Wujiang directly blocked in front of Chu Xiu and said coldly, "Chu Xiu, what do you want?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "What? Of course, I'm here to get my reward from the God Weapon Convention. Otherwise, why would I come here?" Hearing Chu Xiu's words, everyone present reacted. Right now, both sides were fighting so fiercely for the demon sword longing yearning, and the embryo of the divine weapon was thrown here by them. What was truly valuable was a divine weapon. Although the embryo in front of them was not a divine weapon, it was still an embryo with the potential of a divine weapon. Naturally, it could also be considered a treasure. After being reminded by Chu Xiu, they remembered that if they could get their hands on this thing, this God Weapon Convention would not be in vain. Xiahou Wujiang laughed coldly and said, "What a joke. You haven't even gotten first place in this God Weapon Convention, and you want to get this reward? Moreover, Master Mo Yezi and the seniors of the Hidden Sword Villa are fighting fiercely, but you came to get this embryo yourself. What's the difference between this and stealing?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Of course there's a difference. I'm taking it openly, not sneakily. The first place of the God Weapon Convention is qualified to get this divine weapon. Right now, I've defeated Shin Bai, and even the embryo of this divine weapon has condensed into a saber shape because of me. Who dares to compete with me?" Chu Xiu's cold eyes looked around. Almost all the warriors present turned their heads, not daring to look at Chu Xiu. At this time, these people present did not even dare to show their heads. Just now they had seen the power of Chu Xiu when he crippled Shin Bai. Among the same level, who could be a match for him? Jumping out to challenge Chu Xiu at this time was almost equivalent to seeking death. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "You saw it. They all admit that I'm the first place of this God Weapon Convention. Now that I'm here to take this thing, do you have any objections? Or is it that here only you, Xiahou Wujiang, are unconvinced?" At this time, Mo Tianlin and the other two also walked up to the arena, standing behind Chu Xiu. This kind of attitude was needless to say. Xiahou Wujiang frowned when he saw the situation, cursing in his heart that these martial artists were useless. They were actually scared to such an extent by Chu Xiu alone. But now that the others did not make a move, he did not have absolute confidence against Chu Xiu. Coupled with Mo Tianlin and the other two, he was almost certain to lose. But Xiahou Wujiang was a person who cared a lot about his reputation. Just now he even took the initiative to stand up to stop Chu Xiu. But now if he cowered because of Chu Xiu's threat, where would he put his face? Therefore Xiahou Wujiang could only soften his tone and said, "Little sister Luo, this matter has nothing to do with you. Don't get involved. Also, Xie Xiaolu, my Xiahou clan and your world alliance mind our own business. We even have some business dealings. Today you are standing on Chu Xiu's side. Have you obtained Alliance Chief Chen's approval?" He wanted to persuade Luo Feiheng and Xie Xiaolu to withdraw. As for Mo Tianlin, he really did not say anything. Mo Tianlin had already formed a death feud with him. If there was a chance, he was sure that Mo Tianlin would definitely hit him when he was down. Therefore, no matter what he said, Mo Tianlin would not retreat. Luo Feiheng sneered and said, "Xiahou Wujiang, if you want to have ideas about me, you have to see if you are qualified. What I want to do is none of your business. I would like to see how strong your Xiahou clan spirit control technique is." Luo Feiheng was ranked 11th on the Longhu leaderboard, and Xiahou Wujiang was just in front of her. If there was a chance, Luo Feiheng did not mind kicking Xiahou Wujiang out and ascending to the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard himself. Seeing these people's attitudes, Xiahou Wujiang was in a dilemma. Chu Xiu seemed to have only known them for a few days, but they were able to stand together so firmly. This made Xiahou Wujiang feel a little helpless. At this time, Tong Kaitai suddenly jumped onto the ring and said with a smile, "We are all in the three-flower realm. Brother Xiahou and I haven't even made a move yet, and you are already going to take the reward. This is a little unfair." Xiahou Wujiang glanced at Tong Kaitai. This guy came from the demonic path and was said to be a lunatic. But now it seemed that this guy was not too crazy. He still knew how to do things that were cost-effective for him. Tong Kaitai pointed at Chu Xiu and said, "Brother Xiahou, you go take care of those three people and then help me. I will deal with Chu Xiu. After that, I will let you have the weapon. I only want Chu Xiu's heart." Xiahou Wujiang frowned. It seemed that this Tong Kaitai was still a lunatic. He actually wanted to dig out Chu Xiu's heart. Was he addicted to digging out hearts? However, Xiahou Wujiang did not care so much. Anyway, it was fine as long as there was someone to deal with Chu Xiu. He was confident that he could take care of the remaining three people in a short time. Walking in front of Luo Feiheng and the others, Xiahou Wujiang said softly, "Little sister of the Luo family, I'm sorry. But don't worry, I won't hurt you." Xiahou Wujiang only spoke softly to Luo Feiheng. As for Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin, he did not even look at them. Since these two people did not want to give him face, then there was no need for him to give them face. Luo Feiheng could not be bothered to talk nonsense with Xiahou Wujiang. The blood spear red kite in her hand moved, and the spear's shadow stretched out like 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix. The dense scarlet spear shadow fell with a glorious momentum. It was incomparably majestic. It was hard to imagine that this was actually the power of a woman's attack. On the other side, Xie Xiaolu also moved. The floating feather blade behind him bloomed with a strange sharpness. The blade's aura was not very powerful, but it was attached to his blade. It was as if it was tearing through the void and its speed was extremely fast. Although it was launched later, it arrived in front of Xiahou Wujiang in the blink of an eye. Finally, Mo Tianlin's hand was also filled with sword qi. Moreover, it could be said that he attacked in anger, bringing with it a powerful momentum to attack Xiahou Wujiang. Seeing the three people attack, the corner of Xiahou Wujiang's mouth revealed a disdainful smile. Although the gap between the three-flower realm and the physical invulnerability realm was huge, there were still many people who could cross a realm to kill people. Xiahou Wujiang often did this kind of thing. But now he was in the three-flower realm, and the others were physical invulnerability realm. Even if Luo Feiheng and the other two joined forces, it would be impossible for them to defeat him. Xiahou Wujiang had absolute confidence in this. Divine light bloomed in his eyes, and the imperial spirit technique was fully unleashed. The spiritual pressure was already faintly condensing into a solid substance. Xiahou Wujiang had already started fighting on his side. Chu Xiu looked at Tong Kaitai and said indifferently, "I didn't go looking for trouble with you, but you took the initiative to come to die. It's really strange. A madman is not the same as a fool. I don't know who gave you the courage to stand here and face me." Tong Kaitai narrowed his eyes and stared at Chu Xiu. He chuckled and said, "Your heart is the most attractive of all the martial artists I've seen. I have a feeling that even if I swallow the heart of a martial arts master, it won't be as beneficial as swallowing your heart. Why don't you give it to me, how about it? Chu Xiu said in a cold tone. Since you want to die so much, then fine, I'll fulfill your wish. As soon as his voice fell, Chu Xiu directly formed the Great Vajra Wheel Seal and blasted it toward Tong Kai Tai. Last time, Chu Xiu already wanted to kill Tong Kai Tai. The other party felt that there was something wrong with his heart. Although Tong Kai Tai didn't know why, the secret of the glazed golden silk goo couldn't be lost. Chu Xiu didn't plan to keep him alive and was ready to find an opportunity to kill Tong Kai Tai. Now that Tong Kai Tai had jumped out recklessly to court death, Chu Xiu didn't need to be polite with him. Chapter 255. Chu Xiu's strength had already been revealed when he fought with Shen Bai just now. Even Xiahou Wujiang didn't have absolute confidence in fighting with Chu Xiu. Tong Kai Tai was just a madman, not a fool. He had the guts to fight with Chu Xiu only because he still had a sliver of a chance to kill Chu Xiu. When Chu Xiu fought with Shen Bai just now, most people only saw Chu Xiu's strength, but they neglected the fact that Chu Xiu had crippled Shen Bai. Naturally, he wasn't unscathed. Tong Kai Tai's actions in the Jianghu were so crazy not only because of his strength, but also because of his abnormal perception ability. When it came to talent, Tong Kai Tai could only be considered mediocre. However, his perception ability was able to help him escape from the numerous experts of Longhu Mountain's celestial master abode. It could even be said that if he didn't have his perception ability, he would have already been caught by the people of Longhu Mountain in the mountains of West Chu and directly cut into pieces. Moreover, Tong Kai Tai's perception ability was also very useful in a fight. He could clearly perceive the opponent's weaknesses and flaws, which could be said to be a great killing weapon in a fight. At this moment, he dared to fight with Chu Xiu because he naturally sensed the injuries and exhaustion in Chu Xiu's body. He might not necessarily have no confidence in this fight. Most importantly, there was still Xiahou Wujiang over there. As long as Xiahou Wujiang dealt with the 3 physical invulnerability realm warriors first, they would be able to defeat Chu Xiu in a 2 versus 1 situation. Being a madman didn't mean that he was stupid. Tong Kai Tai only acted crazily, but in reality he was meticulous in a fight. This could also be said to be a kind of talent. As Chu Xiu's Great Vajra Wheel Seal descended, Tong Kai Tai's hands moved. The demonic energy within his 10 fingers seemed to transform into a large net, directly resisting Chu Xiu's Great Vajra Wheel Seal. Although his demonic chi net had been shattered by Chu Xiu's Great Vajra Wheel imprint, he had successfully blocked the explosive power of the Great Vajra Wheel imprint. Immediately after, an Azura hand descended and powerful demonic chi erupted, directly crushing Chu Xiu's Great Vajra Wheel imprint. The Great Vajra Wheel Seal fell several times in a row, but Tong Kai Tai used this method to break it. Chu Xiu furrowed his brows as he tapped his fingers together. In an instant, thunderous explosions rang out and the power of the Buddhist voice was deafening. Chu Xiu displayed his outer lion seal, but Tong Kai Tai seemed to have long been prepared for it. All the blood, chi and demonic energy in his body filled his ears, and he actually used his own inner force and blood to resist Chu Xiu's outer lion seal. Although a trace of blood flowed from his ears under the powerful collision of Chu Xiu's power, his slightly clumsy method successfully blocked Chu Xiu's outer lion seal. In fact, it didn't even affect him in the slightest. After a few moves, Chu Xiu suddenly frowned. He felt that something was wrong. He seemed to have already guessed what Tong Kai Tai was planning. He wanted to exhaust himself to death. Although Chu Xiu had only exchanged blows with Tong Kai Tai once to probe him, he could faintly sense that Tong Kai Tai's martial skills leaned towards the offensive type. Thus, Tong Kai Tai would definitely not adopt such a cowardly stance when fighting. And now, Tong Kai Tai was spending so much effort to block Chu Xiu's Great Vajra Wheel Seal, and even used the stupidest method to block Chu Xiu's outer lion seal. There was only one goal for him to do this, and that was to exhaust Chu Xiu's strength and inner force. Tong Kai Tai used this method to fight with Chu Xiu, but in fact, the one who consumed the most energy was himself. But the repercussions from Chu Xiu's previous fight with Shen Bai could not be eliminated so quickly. To completely recover, even with the glazed golden thread goo, it would take a day. So if this continued, the one who would suffer would still be Chu Xiu. Looking at Tong Kai Tai, Chu Xiu sneered while fighting. I didn't expect it. Everyone says that you, Tong Kai Tai, act crazily and are no different from a lunatic. But in fact, you are the most cunning one. Tong Kai Tai said indifferently, killing also requires one's brain. If I really didn't have a brain, I'm afraid I would have been cut into pieces countless times by those cowards in Celestial Master Manor. Chu Xiu, this time your heart is destined to be mine. I want to dig it open and see what's in your heart. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, You want to drag it out until Xiahou Wujiang comes to help you? That's a good idea, but unfortunately you chose the wrong target. You overestimate Xiahou Wujiang and underestimate Luo Feiheng and the others. Tong Kaitai was not an idiot. Although he wanted to exhaust Chu Xiu to death, he had no intention of completely dying with Chu Xiu. So he was still only exhausting Chu Xiu. When Xiahou Wujiang was finished, the two of them would join forces to kill Chu Xiu. Then they would both get what they needed. But when he looked at Xiahou Wujiang, he couldn't help but call Xiahou Wujiang an idiot in his heart. Tong Kaitai was already able to do his best to stall Chu Xiu, but Xiahou Wujiang dropped the ball at this time. It was simply embarrassing. Even though Xiahou Wujiang had already reached the three-flower realm, he was still being suppressed by Luo Feiheng and the other two in a 3-on-1 battle. The Xiahou clan's Imperial Spirit technique could use mental strength to forcibly control a warrior to fight for them, just like a puppet. But among the three people at present, although Xie Xiaolo's strength and realm were not as good as Xiahou Wujiang's, he had a tenacious mind and could completely rely on his own willpower to resist the Imperial Spirit technique. And Luo Feiheng was even more so. He had once betrayed his family, although that was in the future. Even Mo Qinlin's mind had become a lot more tenacious after almost being humiliated by Xiahou Wujiang. At this time he wouldn't fall for it so easily. Under the joint attack of the three people, the effect of the Imperial Spirit technique was reduced to the extreme. He was still being chased by three physical invulnerability realm warriors. Among them, the most outstanding was Luo Feiheng. Her blood spear Red Kite was said to have used the blood of several martial arts grandmasters and several kinds of raptors as fuel to refine the embryo. In the end, after the blood spear Red Kite was formed, it had an extremely strong blood chi. When it attacked, it was extremely violent. The effect of the Xiahou clan's Imperial Spirit technique was directly reduced to the extreme when it came to her. So after the two sides exchanged more than 10 moves, Xiahou Wujiang even began to lose and retreat step by step. Being forced to the extreme by the joint attack of the three, Xiahou Wujiang's eyes revealed a cold light. He didn't use the killer move of the Imperial Spirit technique just now because he was afraid of hurting Luo Feiheng. But right now this woman didn't care about his face at all and directly attacked to kill. Then Xiahou Wujiang didn't need to hold back. If he was really defeated by the three of them together, that would be really embarrassing. Light golden divine light burst out from Xiahou Wujiang's body. This was his gang chi, which wasn't very strong. After all, Xiahou clan's main cultivation was psychic energy. But at this time, Xiahou Wujiang pulled his hands horizontally, and the gang chi in his body seemed to condense into the strings of a zither. His own psychic energy was completely condensed and he plucked the zither strings. In an instant, there was a violent explosion that resounded through the mind. Imperial Spirit Zither Sound. This was a secret technique of the Xiahou clan's Imperial Spirit technique. With the gang chi as the strings and psychic energy as the hands, it played a soul-calming song and directly attacked the opponent's psychic energy. Only this kind of attack that could be transmitted on the spiritual level could be considered a true primordial spirit secret technique. The three people who bore the brunt of the attack suddenly groaned. The sharp pain that resounded in their heads made it impossible for them to attack again. Among them, Mo Tianlin, who had a slightly weaker cultivation, even spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. But at this time, Luo Feiheng forced herself to continue taking out her blood spear Red Kite. Regardless of the damage to her body, she poured endless power of chi and blood into the long spear, and when the spear fell, the cry of a phoenix soared to the sky. Spear users had always been the kind of martial artists with majestic martial arts, and it was really rare for a woman like Luo Feiheng to use such a majestic martial arts technique. Moreover, Luo Feiheng didn't hold back at all with this spear. She had been unhappy with Xiahou Wujiang for a long time. Not only did the other party pester her all day long and say those disgusting words, but he also wanted to bewitch the Luo family and let the Luo family form a marriage alliance with the Xiahou clan. This was simply wishful thinking. Therefore, when Luo Feiheng's furious spear fell, a majestic bloody shadow fell across the sky. Xiahou Wujiang pointed out with a finger, and the divine control weapon condensation was invincible. This divine control finger was also a martial art technique in the divine control technique. It used one's own power as a medium to pour spiritual power into it, reaching the level of influencing the other party's mind and even controlling them. But at this time, facing Luo Feiheng's furious spear, Xiahou Wujiang's divine control finger was directly shattered. But at the same time, Luo Feiheng was also attacked by the spiritual power in the divine control finger, and there was a moment of absent-mindedness. But at this time Xiahou Wujiang wasn't having a good time either. After taking on Luo Feiheng's stunning spear, his arm had already begun to tremble. But in the end Xiahou Wujiang didn't say anything and just turned to leave. This time, everyone was a little confused. What did Xiahou Wujiang mean by this? Of course at this time, everyone didn't see that Xiahou Wujiang's internal organs had already been shaken by Luo Feiheng's spear to the point that his blood and qi were boiling. If he didn't leave he would probably vomit blood on the spot and embarrass himself. But when Xiahou Wujiang left, Tong Kaitai almost vomited blood in anger. He was forcefully resisting Chu Xiu, but in the end Xiahou Wujiang retreated at this time. How could there be such a scam? Chu Xiu sneered and said, "As I said, you have underestimated Luo Feiheng and the others, and also overestimated Xiahou Wujiang." Chu Xiu didn't have confidence in Xie Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin, and he didn't understand their strength, but he had confidence in Luo Feiheng. For the future Luo Feiheng to have such achievements, one could imagine Luo Feiheng's true strength. "Xiahou Wujiang is leaving, you stay here." Although Chu Xiu had internal injuries, his eyes still revealed a hint of murderous intent. The wisdom fist seal fell with a loud bang, imprisoning the space and rendering heaven and earth useless. Since Tong Kaitai was courting death, he would solve this trouble today. Chapter 256. Xiahou Wujiang's departure had directly trapped Tong Kaitai here. With Chu Xiu's strength, even if he was seriously injured now, Tong Kaitai was not sure that he could defeat Chu Xiu, not to mention that there were still Luo Feiheng and the other two eyeing him covetously. By the time they recovered, he would not be able to escape under the siege of the four. So at this moment Tong Kaitai directly made a decision: escape. However, under Chu Xiu's wisdom fist seal, the surrounding space was sealed, and his figure seemed to be trapped in a swamp, unable to break free. Chu Xiu's red sleeve blade was unsheathed, and the blood-refined divine aura sprinkled down like a torrential downpour. The sudden burst of power made Tong Kaitai struggle to resist. Fortunately, Chu Xiu wasn't in his peak condition, so his wisdom fist seal didn't last too long. After Tong Kaitai broke free from the wisdom fist seal's seal, the demonic aura around his body skyrocketed. Even his body was completely enveloped by the demonic aura. The surrounding demonic aura lingered around him, as though he had transformed into a ghost god from the legends of the wilderness. It was extremely terrifying. The claw that stretched for several feet fell, and Tong Kaitai's whole body's gang qi had condensed in his claw. The power was immeasurable and it crashed down on Chu Xiu. This claw was like Tong Kaitai's Azura claw, but it did not seem like it. The claw was condensed with a powerful demonic aura, which was actually mixed with a strong evil blood aura. The red sleeve blade in Chu Xiu's hand also erupted with demonic aura. The second blade of the Avicii three blades fell, and the demonic blade collided with the demonic claw. In an instant the demonic aura dispersed, and even the arena became a lot colder. The blade smashed the demonic claw, but at the same time, Chu Xiu's Avicii three blades was also broken. However, Tong Kaitai's figure in front of him turned into a black shadow and ran away. He actually began to escape the moment he attacked. It should be said that he did not intend to fight with Chu Xiu at all. The surrounding people were stunned. Tong Kaitai's performance seemed to be a little timid, which was somewhat inconsistent with his crazy way of doing things. Chu Xiu's hand formed the inner binding seal, and his speed instantly exploded to the extreme. While chasing Tong Kaitai he said coldly, "The Mirror Lake Villa has been sealed by the array. Even if you escape, where can you escape to?" At this time Luo Feiheng and the others recovered from the battle with Xiahou Wujiang and gradually surrounded Tong Kaitai. Tong Kaitai smiled and said, "Of course I escaped outside. Look over there, even God is helping me." Just as Chu Xiu was exchanging blows with Tong Kaitai, the outcome of the battle between the Phaseless Demon Sect and the Hidden Sword Villa had also been decided. Sword fans Feng and Cheng and Xiu and said to say, "Shan, Cheng's Shan Li, Chen's Xiu Shan's lost Xiu," but even if they handed over the demon swords, the Phaseless Demon Sect would not let them off. In the past, the Hidden Sword Villa had participated in the siege of the Kunlun Devil cult. Moreover, the Hidden Sword Villa had also participated in the matter of strangling the Phaseless Demon Sect. Both sides had already become sworn enemies, so there was no difference whether they handed over the demon sword or not. However, the people from the Hidden Sword Villa were very decisive. When Qing Tingfeng saw that he and the others had fallen into a trap, he chose to burn his blood essence and use the secret technique of the Hidden Sword Villa to destroy the formation, while he protected the others from the back. At this time there was already a gap in the array. The people from Hidden Sword Villa could leave and so could Tong Kai-tai. Chu Xiu, I'll keep your heart with you for the time being. When I have the chance I'll come and take it. With that, Tong Kai-tai's speed increased, and he directly fled towards the gap in the formation. Looking at Tong Kai-tai's back, Chu Xiu's eyes flashed with a strong killing intent. His current state was not very good. In the battle with Shen Bai, he had expended too much energy and he had also suffered some injuries. Moreover, Tong Kai-tai's speed was not slow either. If it was someone else, Chu Xiu would most likely give up on the chase and find another opportunity to finish him off. However, this person was Tong Kai-tai, and he had also discovered the abnormality in his heart. This was something that Chu Xiu could not tolerate. Tong Kai-tai already knew this secret, and it was hard to guarantee that he would not tell others. What Chu Xiu was most worried about was that this matter would be known by the Miaojiang moon-worshipping cult. People's imagination was very strong. There were many people in the pugilistic world who knew about the glazed gold silk goo, but very few people knew about its characteristics. The Miaojiang moon-worshipping cult was one of them. If the people from the Miaojiang moon-worshipping cult knew that Chu Xiu's heart was abnormal, and they found out about his strange talent, through clues, would they link it to the glazed gold silk goo? Although the probability was very small, Chu Xiu did not dare to guarantee it. It was the safest to kill the crisis before it started. So today Tong Kai-tai must die. At this moment, Chu Xiu made a decision. He pinched the inner binding seal, but at the same time the aura shield erupted. His whole body was filled with blood mist, and his blood essence was burning continuously. Chu Xiu's figure was like an arrow that left the bow, and he was almost behind Tong Kai-tai in an instant. Seeing Chu Xiu's action, Tong Kai-tai's expression suddenly changed. He really could not understand why Chu Xiu would choose to chase after him like a madman, even going so far as to burn his essence blood, something that would harm both himself and others. Even when Chu Xiu had been fighting Shen Bai, he had not been so desperate. Although he attacked Chu Xiu several times, in fact he really did not cause any actual harm to Chu Xiu. So why did Chu Xiu do things so resolutely? Was he the madman or was he the madman? But at this time, Tong Kai-tai could not care so much, because Chu Xiu in front of him had already slashed with his saber. As the saber fell, the boundless demonic aura suddenly shrouded the red sleeve saber in his hand and his whole body. Shrill ghost howls sounded. Avicii Hell, Eternal Fall. Tong Kai-tai was very familiar with this saber, because Chu Xiu used this saber just now to defeat Shen Bai. But everyone had seen the consumption of the saber just now. It was absolutely not easy for Chu Xiu to use such a saber. As a result, he used it for the second time in a short time. How much did he want Tong Kai-tai to die? In the face of this terrifying saber, Tong Kai-tai gritted his teeth. The blue veins and blood vessels on his arm soared, and countless blood mist lingered on it. When the claw fell, it was no longer a demonic claw, but a bloody claw stained with endless blood mist. Blood-weeping demon hand. This was Tong Kai-tai's real trump card, but it consumed the blood chi of his whole body. Even after using it, his arm would be temporarily crippled for a period of time. The long saber stained with the demonic aura of hell slashed through the blood-weeping demon hand, and the gloomy demonic aura tore the demonic hand. The scene when these two people fought was simply a killing between the demonic path. As the saber fell, Chu Xiu's face was incomparably pale. The demonic aura was surging, and even his eyes were filled with a strong demonic aura. But looking at Tong Kai-tai, who was opposite him, after taking 3 of Chu Xiu's Avicii Dao sabers, his injuries were even more serious than Chu Xiu's. His entire right arm was already dripping with blood, and the flesh was torn apart. In some places even the eerie white bone was exposed. Madman. Tong Kai-tai cursed in his heart. Many people in the pugilistic world scolded him as a madman, but Tong Kai-tai now believed that Chu Xiu was the madman from the bottom of his heart. There was a reason why he acted crazily and killed people, but he could not understand why Chu Xiu was so relentless in trying to kill him, even at the cost of both of them suffering. What exactly did he want? However, he could not care so much now. Now that he had lost an arm, if he did not hurry and escape, his fate would be miserable. Not to mention that Luo Feiheng and the rest were chasing after him. Tong Kai-tai himself also had many enemies in Jianghu. Even someone who had nothing to do with him could easily hit him when he was down, when he was seriously injured, wanting to kill him and go to Mount Longhu for the bounty. But just as he was about to escape, Chu Xiu suddenly put away his saber and formed a seal with both hands. It was a very simple seal. His left hand was lightly clenched into a fist, and his right thumb was lightly pressed against the left index finger. However, such a simple hand seal blossomed with a dazzling radiance in Chu Xiu's hands. It was as dazzling as the sun. May all living beings be perfect and let out supreme light. Preamble Formula, Perfect Aquarius Seal. Feeling the power contained in the perfect Aquarius seal, Tong Kai-Tai roared in anger. Boundless demonic aura erupted from his body, but in an instant, it was swallowed by the endless light. Under this power, everything would be melted and destroyed. The light scattered, and the demonic aura had completely dissipated. A soft sound rang out, and Tong Kai-Tai's body was sent flying to the side like a broken rag doll. His face was already beyond recognition, and it was almost impossible to tell that he was human. At this time, Chu Xiu's face was frighteningly pale as if he was a zombie. As his breathing sounded, the skin around Chu Xiu's meridian split open, and blood gushed out like a fountain. It was incomparably terrifying, and those who did not know would think that Chu Xiu had been killed by 1,000 cuts. Seeing this scene, Luo Feiheng and the rest who rushed over from behind were stunned. The other cultivators were also stunned. In the past they all thought that Tong Kai-Tai was a madman, but now they were sure that Chu Xiu was the real madman. In their opinion, the enmity between Chu Xiu and Tong Kai-Tai was not that big. Tong Kai-Tai had provoked Chu Xiu twice and it was not a big deal. At most, it could be considered as two small conflicts. But in the end, because of such a small matter, Chu Xiu was willing to kill Tong Kai-Tai on the spot, even at the cost of both sides suffering. What kind of enmity did he have? Was it really necessary? Everyone present shuddered and looked at Chu Xiu with a hint of fear in their eyes. Sometimes, people who could not be seen through were the most terrifying. Obviously they could not see through Chu Xiu. This person simply could not be judged by common sense. Chapter 257. Most people in the Jianghu were used to measuring everything by benefits, and those who violated the rules of benefits were either fools or lunatics. In their eyes, Chu Xiu was the latter. This kind of person was the most untouchable, because it was impossible to guess what the other party wanted to do through benefits. In fact, Chu Xiu was also a realist and he also valued benefits. But now Tong Kai-Tai had touched Chu Xiu's reverse scale. In order to completely eliminate a hidden danger, it was worth it to pay some price, although this price seemed a little big to others. Luo Feiheng and the others rushed over, and they frowned when they saw Chu Xiu's appearance. Mo Tianlin asked directly, "Brother Chu, can you still hold on? I say you're too desperate. That Tong Kai-Tai is arrogant, and he has long been wanted by the Celestial Master Abode of Mount Longhu. Even if he escapes today, he will be caught and brought to the Celestial Master Abode to be punished sooner or later. Why are you doing this?" Chu Xiu formed the lion seal in his hand and began to suppress the injuries in his body. At the same time, he threw a handful of elixirs into his mouth and said faintly, "I want to kill him because I want to kill him. If the Celestial Master Abode wants to kill him, it's their business. This is not the same." Chu Xiu's reason made them speechless, but when they thought of Chu Xiu's history of intermittently going crazy, they all understood. The others also thought of the time in front of the Water Cloud Monastery, when Chu Xiu went crazy and fought against 100 people, killing them all. Obviously this time Chu Xiu might have gone crazy again, and that was why he desperately wanted to kill Tong Kai-Tai even if he was seriously injured. When they thought of this, those who wanted to be enemies with Chu Xiu in the future had to think twice. When Chu Xiu was in a normal state, he might still care about one's identity and status, and consider the gains and losses of killing one and so on. However, when Chu Xiu went crazy, all of this was uncertain. Moreover, the people present were a little emotional. This time, Tong Kai-Tai also courted death by jumping out to provoke Chu Xiu twice. In fact, Tong Kai-Tai was still very careful in the pugilistic world. He had been chased by the experts of Mount Longhu's Celestial Master Abode for so long, and he had relied on his perception to evade them. But this time, when faced with Chu Xiu's direct attack, he couldn't even dodge. At this time, the embryo of the magic weapon in the center of the 5 rings had basically taken shape, and it was in the shape of a long saber. However, the aura was extremely unstable and it was not yet. Everyone could guess this because Mo Yezi was not here to clean up the mess. Although it was using an array to refine, this kind of refining technique was definitely not that simple. As long as the array was set up, it would be fine. Otherwise, wouldn't this array be equivalent to a refining grandmaster? However, Chu Xiu did not care. He had an idea in his mind and he could try it now. Chu Xiu took out a secret box which contained 2 fragments. They were the fragments of the Sky Devil Order that Chu Xiu got from the Ghost King sect and the Zhang siblings. Chu Xiu took out a secret box from his bosom. Inside it were 2 shard-like things. It was the God's Devil Order shard that Chu Xiu got from the Ghost King sect and the Zhang siblings. This thing was forged from the same material as the embryo in front of him. They came from the same source. If he threw them in as well, would there be any changes to the divine weapon? Wiping away the blood on his face, Chu Xiu said to Mo Tianlin and the other 2, "Guys, please protect me." Chu Xiu wiped the blood off his face and said to Mo Tianlin and the other 2, "I'll have to trouble you to protect me." In fact, it was fine even if they did not help because everyone was scared out of their wits. In fact, it didn't matter even if they didn't help because everyone present was scared out of their wits. They hadn't forgotten Chu Xiu's crazy look of vowing to kill Tong Kai Tai just now. Although Chu Xiu looked miserable at this time, who could guarantee that Chu Xiu didn't have the strength to fight now? Therefore, even though the embryo of the divine weapon was right in front of them, none of them dared to have any ideas about it. Chu Xiu directly threw the 2 fragments of the God's Devil token into the furnace. Although Mo Tianlin and the others were curious about what it was, they did not ask too much. After the 2 fragments of the Sky Devil Order were thrown into the furnace, the Sky Devil Order that was not contaminated with demonic chi was the first to fuse with the embryo, causing the saber-shaped embryo to swell up and undergo some changes. After seeing this scene, Chu Xiu's eyes suddenly lit up. It's effective. Although the second Sky Devil Order had fused with the saber embryo began to tremble violently. The second fragment of the Sky Devil Order was stained with powerful and pure demonic chi, but the fragment of the Sky Devil Order from the Ghost King sect and the original saber embryo did not. Chu Xiu didn't know why he obtained the piece from the Ghost King sect, but the fragment of the Sky Devil Order that the Hidden Sword Villa gave to Mo Yezi was also stained with a lot of demonic chi, so Mo Yezi must have used some method to erase it. After all, what he wanted to refine was a divine weapon. Although it was said that a demonic weapon was also a divine weapon, it would not sound good to say it out loud. Therefore, the demonic chi on the Sky Devil Order was erased by Mo Yezi. However, now that Chu Xiu had thrown in another fragment of the Sky Devil Order that was surging with demonic chi, the blade was once again tainted with a trace of demonic nature. However, he didn't know what material Mo Yezi had added to the original embryo, but it actually caused the saber embryo and the demonic nature to repel each other, making it impossible for the 2 to fuse. Chu Xiu frowned. If that was the case, he might have overreached himself. It was possible that the saber embryo and the 2 fragments of the Sky Devil Order would be shattered. After the 2 sides were in a deadlock for a full 15 minutes, the demonic chi finally gained the upper hand. A lump of iron made of unknown material was forcefully squeezed out of the saber embryo. The Sky Devil Order that was stained with demonic chi completely fused with the saber embryo, and the originally silver-white saber embryo instantly turned pitch black. Mo Tianlin shook his head and said, "It's a pity that it didn't become a divine weapon in the end. However, from the looks of it, it definitely has the 6th transformation." After a divine weapon was refined, there would be a phenomenon of light appearing, but this saber did not. It was obvious that something had gone wrong, and it was a step away from becoming a divine weapon. Chu Xiu, on the other hand, was mentally prepared. The problem should be with the thing that repelled the demonic chi. However, although the expected divine weapon did not succeed, a 6th transformation treasure was still useful to Chu Xiu. The most important thing was that this saber actually had the foundation to become a divine weapon. After all, whether it was the Sky Devil Order or some of the materials Mo Yezi had added, they were definitely some precious items. The materials determined that this saber had the foundation to become a divine weapon. At this moment, the sound of a saber trembling could be heard. The long saber actually directly rushed towards Chu Xiu. Mo Tianlin wanted to intercept it, but Chu Xiu raised his hand, indicating that Mo Tianlin did not need to. He did not feel any killing intent from the saber. Chu Xiu stretched out his hand and directly held the long saber in his hand. However, in an instant, the long saber began to absorb Chu Xiu's blood, causing Chu Xiu's complexion to become even paler. This long saber had absorbed a lot of Chu Xiu's sharp chi, and it originally had a trace of Chu Xiu's mark. At this time, after absorbing Chu Xiu's blood, the saber had completely established a connection with its owner. Even if others obtained this saber, they would not be able to use its full power. Fortunately, this saber did not absorb too much of Chu Xiu's chi and blood. However, after absorbing Chu Xiu's chi and blood, the shape of the saber also changed a little. At this time, everyone carefully looked at this long saber. Whether it was Mo Tianlin, Xie Xiaolu or Luo Feiheng, their first impression of this saber was that it was very evil. It was a very evil saber. Normally, after a weapon was forged, the refiner would refine the appearance of the weapon. Normally, this saber should be the same. However, because Mo Yezi was not present, this saber was only in the shape of a simple saber. The entire body of the saber was slightly longer than the red sleeve saber, but it was still long and narrow. The blade and hilt were both pitch black, and the shape was very simple. However, the truly evil thing was that after it absorbed Chu Xiu's blood, traces of blood lines appeared on the body of the saber. At the point where the blade and hilt connected, the blood lines converged and condensed into something that looked like a scarlet eye, adding a bit of strangeness. Holding the long saber tightly and feeling the power within it, Chu Xiu could roughly determine that the grade of this saber should be a top-grade 6th Revolution precious weapon. It was only one step away from becoming a divine weapon. Moreover, its nature was the same as the blood spear red kite in Luo Feiheng's hands. They were both precious weapons with the potential to become divine weapons. In terms of value, it was far beyond ordinary 6th-rank precious weapons. Mo Tianlin said, "Give it a name." Normally, a weapon should be named by the forger, but now I think even Master Mo Yezi will not be able to recognize this weapon. Since it was forged by you, you should naturally be the one to name it. Chu Xiu glanced at the long saber in his hand. On the black long saber there were evil bloodlines dancing. After thinking for a while, Chu Xiu directly said, "Demonic dance." Using the demonic order as the main material, it naturally had to be named demonic. Similarly, the demonic dance also had the meaning of demonic dance, magnificent and dangerous at the same time. Mo Tianlin shook his head and said, "Brother Chu, I'm afraid this name is a bit of a taboo. This thing was originally forged from the demonic order of the Kunlun devil cult, and you directly named it demonic dance. This is equivalent to once again reminding the people of Jianghu of the connection between this saber and the Kunlun devil cult." Chu Xiu indifferently said, "In the past it might have been a bit of a taboo, but Hidden Sword Mountain Villa dared to cooperate with Mo Yezi to restore the demon sword Everlasting Yearning. Compared to them, I am just a small sorcerer in the presence of a great sorcerer. Even if the sky falls, there will be tall people to hold it up. Now no one will pay attention to me." Mo Tianlin pondered for a moment and realized that it made sense. The God Weapon Conference this time was very noisy at the beginning, but it was estimated that it would be even more noisy after it ended. Chapter 258. He didn't get the God Weapon, but Chu Xiu got a precious weapon, so it wasn't a big loss. The entire Mirror Lake Villa was empty, and Chu Xiu was also heavily injured. Therefore, Chu Xiu directly followed Mo Tianlin and the others back to the Ji State Prefecture to recuperate and pay attention to the movements in the Jianghu. This time, Chu Xiu's injuries were a little more serious, mainly the damage to his meridians. He used a perfect Aquarius seal to blast Tong Kai Tai to death, but the backlash of this martial art directly tore the meridians in Chu Xiu's body. The last 3 styles of the 9 words formula consumed an extremely shocking amount of inner strength, and the explosive power was also a test of Chu Xiu's endurance. At that moment, the true Qi directly tore Chu Xiu's meridians. Now it would take a certain amount of time to repair. Even with the glazed golden silk goo and Chu Xiu's amazing recovery ability, it would still take him 10 days to half a month. During the time that Chu Xiu recuperated, the outside world was in an uproar because of this God Weapon Conference. Of course, this had nothing to do with Chu Xiu. Half a month later, Chu Xiu's injuries were almost healed, and he directly came out of seclusion. Hearing the news that Chu Xiu had come out of seclusion, Mo Tianlin and the others all came. However, after the 3 of them pushed the door open and entered, they all looked at Chu Xiu with a strange expression. Chu Xiu was surprised and said, "Why are you guys looking at me like that?" Mo Tianlin coughed and said, "Your ranking on the Longhu list has changed. Do you know about it?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "I expected it." He had already stepped into the 3-flower realm and was in the limelight at the God Weapon Convention. If he still couldn't improve his ranking on the Longhu leaderboard, then the fairness of the wind-sweeping tower would be questioned. Mo Tianlin had a strange expression on his face as he asked, "But do you know what your rank is on the Longhu leaderboard?" "Top 10? 6th place." Mo Tianlin slammed the table. After hearing Mo Tianlin's words, Chu Xiu did not expect Wind-Sweeping Tower to raise his ranking so high and even push Nie Donglu down. Rubbing his chin, Chu Xiu murmured, "That's not right. I have nothing to do with wind-sweeping tower. Why would they rank me so highly? Xie Xiaolu said, that's reasonable. After all, you crippled Xun Bai and killed Tong Kai Tai in this god weapon convention. Although Xun Bai was not ranked on the Longhu leaderboard, based on the strength he had displayed, he was definitely in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. As for Tong Kai Tai, he was ranked 13th on the Longhu leaderboard when he was in the physical invulnerability realm. Now that he has stepped into the three-flower realm, he was still killed by you. This is also a battle record. In this god weapon convention, you basically killed and crippled 2 warriors who could be in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. This ranking is very normal. Also, Nie Donglu is a little disappointing. He has no battle record and no reputation. Wind-sweeping tower will naturally lower his ranking. This time you didn't just push him down by 1 place. Instead, you directly pushed Nie Donglu out of the top 10 and into the 11th place. I heard that Nie Donglu has been in seclusion for a while, preparing to break through to the three-flower realm. He originally relied on his reputation to be in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. Now that he has given up his reputation to cultivate, he can't blame the Longhu leaderboard for lowering his ranking. If he also had the strength of the three-flower realm, then according to the rules, wind-sweeping tower would only lower his ranking by 1 place. They wouldn't have dropped him out of the top 10 like they did now. When talking about Nie Donglu, Xie Xiaolu's tone also carried a hint of disdain. He was the kind of person who valued strength above all. The people he hated the most were people like Nie Donglu, who only knew how to seek personal gain and scheme. Although Nie Donglu calculated his ranking to be in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard, it was very unstable. Just like how he was now, once his reputation couldn't keep up, he would immediately be pushed down a lot. Only strength was fundamental. At this time, Mo Tianlin pointed at Luo Feiheng and said, this time you're not the only one who performed well. Luo Feiheng is the same. She is now in the 10th place of the Longhu leaderboard, directly pushing Xiahou Wujiang down. To be honest, Xiahou Wujiang is quite unlucky. Everyone else rose in the rankings after stepping into the three-flower realm, but he fell, and by 2 places at that. He is now behind Nie Donglu in the 12th place. There are external invulnerability realm warriors in the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard, but as a three-flower realm warrior, he is the only one who hasn't stepped into the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. When Mo Tianlin said this, there was a look of schadenfreude on his face. For him, he was naturally happy that his enemy Xiahou Wujiang was unlucky. Of course, this time Xiahou Wujiang was courting death himself. If he hadn't jumped out to fight Chu Xiu, he wouldn't have been defeated by Luo Feiheng. Although the situation was a bit complicated at the beginning, it was actually Luo Feiheng and the other 2 who besieged him. However, the main force was Luo Feiheng, so this achievement was naturally attributed to Luo Feiheng. On the other side, Luo Feiheng wasn't modest. Instead, he smiled proudly. Not only did he teach Xiahou Wujiang a lesson, but he was also able to step into the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. Felt good. At this time, Mo Tianlin suddenly said to Xie Xiaolu, this time, it seems like you're the unluckiest one. Brother Chu and Fei Hong's Longhu leaderboard have risen, but my ranking hasn't changed. You, on the other hand, have been squeezed out by 1 place. Previously, Xie Xiaolu was ranked 12th on the Longhu leaderboard. Now that Chu Xiu had stepped in, others like Nie Donglu and Xiahou Wujiang, although the leaderboard had changed, were still in the top 12. Therefore, Xie Xiaolu was naturally squeezed out by 1 place. Since Tong Kai Tai, who was originally ranked 13th, was killed, Mo Tianlin, who was ranked behind him, didn't change his ranking. Xie Xiaolu shrugged indifferently. He was convinced by Chu Xiu's strength. Even if he was squeezed out by 1 place, he didn't have anything to say. That's right, in the end, who has the demon sword everlasting yearning? Chu Xiu asked. Mo Tianlin put away his teasing attitude and said in a deep voice, speaking of which, it's quite interesting. This matter actually ended in a lose-lose situation. The phaseless demon sect pursued relentlessly. After the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa thought that they couldn't escape, Qing Tingfeng actually chose to forcefully activate the demon sword everlasting yearning that hadn't completely recovered. Although it exploded with astonishing power, the everlasting yearning wasn't something he could control. Therefore, after he heavily injured Situ Li and the other martial artists of the phaseless demon sect, he was also heavily injured by the backlash. Most importantly, you've also seen the appearance of the demon sword everlasting yearning. It hadn't completely recovered, and after being activated, it actually shattered. A portion of the fragments were obtained by the phaseless demon sect, while the rest were obtained by the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa. The leaders of both sides were heavily injured, and the people below them were also injured. If they forcefully fought, they would most likely perish together. Therefore the phaseless demon sect chose to retreat. Chu Xiu nodded. This Cheng Ting Feng was really able to do it, to actually forcefully activate the demonic weapon. Although the everlasting yearning was a demon weapon, it was still a 9th transformation treasure sword. In the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa, it was the kind that could be worshipped. In the end, Cheng Ting Feng was forced to forcefully activate its power, harming others and himself. It was obvious that he was forced into a dead end by the phaseless demon sect. Anyway, in the end, everyone would split up and no one would benefit. Mo Tianlin sighed and said, "Speaking of which, the ones who benefited the most from this God Weapon Conference are us, the younger generation martial artists. The others didn't get any benefits. The phaseless demon sect suffered heavy losses. Although they didn't let the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa get the everlasting yearning, it caused the everlasting yearning to be completely destroyed. It was the same for the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa. Originally, they planned to hold the God Weapon Conference on the surface to earn some reputation, and secretly repair the everlasting yearning. However, they didn't expect to suffer a double loss this time. After such a thing happened, the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa did gain some reputation, but it was all scolded and ridiculed by the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa for being blinded by greed. Even Mo Yizi, who knew that the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa took out the Demon Sword Everlasting Yearning, still wanted to help repair it, was also scolded by many people. After everyone chatted for a while, Mo Tianlin asked, "So many things happened in the God Weapon Conference. Next, I need to go back to the Mo clan to report. Where are the 3 of you planning to go?" Chu Xiu said, "This time I came with the mission of the Guanzhong torture room. Now that the mission is completed, I naturally need to go back to the Guanzhong torture room to report." Xie Xiaolu shrugged and said, "This time I came out to relax. I've only been out for a short period of time, so I won't go back. I plan to continue walking around in Eastern Qi before going back." Luo Feiheng snorted and said, "Yesterday someone from the Luo clan sent me a message telling me to go back quickly. Xiahou Wujiang, that bastard, lost and went back to the Xiahou clan to complain, and the Xiahou clan reported it to the Luo clan. When I go back, I will definitely be scolded by my old man." When saying this, Luo Feiheng's tone revealed a hint of unwillingness. If it were Mo Tianlin who defeated Xiahou Wujiang, then no matter how timid the Mo clan was, they would not show weakness to the Xiahou clan. Instead, they would put in more effort to cultivate Mo Tianlin. But Luo Feiheng was different. After all, she was a woman, and was not worthy of the Luo clan's full cultivation. So, if she defeated Xiahou Wujiang, it would not bring glory to the Luo clan, but would cause trouble for the Luo clan. The people present did not speak. Mo Tianlin and Xie Xiaolu knew the situation of the Luo clan, and Chu Xiu also knew what Luo Feiheng would face in the future. It was useless to say this kind of thing. But at this time, Chu Xiu suddenly said, "Everyone, I have a suggestion now. We can use each other's strength." "What suggestion?" the 3 people all asked. Chu Xiu glanced at the 3 people and said, "At present, although we are all juniors in our respective forces, we also have some strength and influence in our hands. Moreover, there is no conflict or hostility between our forces. How about this? The 4 of us join forces and secretly establish an organization, not involving the forces behind us, only to provide resources and help to each other. What do you think?" Chapter 259. Chu Xiu's suggestion immediately piqued the interest of the 3. Mo Tianlin muttered, "Brother Chu, tell us in detail, what do you mean?" Chu Xiu replied, "What I mean is actually very simple. Just like how the 3 of you helped me today, I will remember this favor, and I will definitely return it in the future. However, today's matter is just a coincidence. If we join forces and one side needs help, as long as the others have the ability, they will come to help. Of course, this help isn't in vain. Even blood brothers should clearly calculate their debts. Those who ask for help can either repay it with things or with favors. Things like benefits are the most unreliable, but at the same time they are also the most reliable. Sometimes, an alliance formed with benefits is even more solid than just relying on loyalty. To sum it up in one sentence, the organization I want to establish is only for ourselves, and not for the powers behind us. Does everyone understand?" Mo Tianlin and the others nodded, their faces revealing contemplative expressions. They naturally understood what Chu Xiu meant. They were themselves, and the powers behind them were the powers behind them. This alliance formed by Chu Xiu was only for themselves. Sometimes when they needed help, it would be related to their own sex predicament. For example, Chu Xiu, his time in the Guanzhong torture room could be said to be fraught with danger. As a newcomer and with a superior like Wei Juduan, it was impossible for Chu Xiu not to plot against each other. There was also Mo Tianlin. Although he was the #1 person in the younger generation of the Mo family, there were countless people in the Mo family who wanted to see him suffer or drag him down. As for Luo Feiheng, needless to say, everyone knew about her situation. Xia Xiaolu should be the most relaxed among the people present. This was because his master was the World Alliance's Qinqing Di. As long as his master was present, he didn't have to worry about his position. Even so, there were still some people in the World Alliance who refused to accept him. In the past, they could only face this kind of predicament by themselves. Even if they were best friends, sometimes it was difficult for them to ask for help. And if it was as Chu Xiu said, and everyone established this organization, then although there would still be some friendship between them, it would be more of a relationship of benefits. The person who wanted to ask for help could also openly ask for help from others. At most, they would owe someone a favor in the future, and it would be enough for them to take it out. Chu Xiu continued, moreover, the organization we have established can also continue to recruit other people, whether they are rogue cultivators or sects. As long as you feel that they are reliable, you can be recruited into the organization, such as Brother Lu Fengxian. Brother Liu is an acquaintance of me and Brother Xia. He is absolutely reliable and his strength is also outstanding. If you can find such a reliable expert when you need help, the benefits will definitely be far beyond your imagination. Hearing the scene described by Chu Xiu, the 3 people present were somewhat tempted. The 3 of them all had their own connections and there were also many reliable ones. As long as they could pull them in, and let them feel the strength and convenience of the organization, they would naturally pull in a few more people. In this way, as long as there were no accidents in the middle, even if it was only 10 years, their organization would be like a rolling snowball, thoroughly expanding. Then what if someone betrays us? Brother Chu, the organization you want to establish is a big taboo, whether it is you or us sects. Xia Xiaolu suddenly asked. For the various sects and families, they naturally hoped that their disciples would wholeheartedly pledge loyalty to their own organization. But now they had secretly joined another organization and had selfish motives. No matter where it was, this was something that the leaders of the sects and families could not tolerate. Chu Xiu smiled coldly and said, what I hate the most are traitors. Since everyone can benefit from this organization, then those who attempt to destroy this organization will be everyone's enemy. Since he has already become everyone's enemy, then there's no need to say what kind of treatment he will receive. Mo Tianlin shivered when he heard this. If their organization could really develop to a certain level, and not just the few of them like they were now, then they would definitely be treated as enemies and traitors by everyone. That would definitely be a terrifying outcome. Luo Feiheng suddenly became interested and said, this suggestion is not bad, I agree. Mo Tianlin said, I also have no objections. He had helped Chu Xiu and Chu Xiu had also helped him. Both sides had a favor, so in theory he had already tasted this benefit. If he could develop more people, then he would undoubtedly obtain even more benefits. Xia Xiaolu thought for a moment, then muttered, then who would be the most suitable person to manage our organization? While saying this, Xia Xiaolu stared at Chu Xiu. He was convinced by Chu Xiu, but only in terms of strength. However, he had never considered himself below Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu smiled and said, an organization with such simple rules doesn't need a leader, only a supervisor. Each of our members is actually a supervisor of each other. Hearing Chu Xiu say this, Xia Xiaolu nodded and said, all right, I also agree. At this time, Luo Feiheng suddenly said, wait, although we don't have many people, we are still an organization. How about we give it a resounding name? Mo Tianlin said, since we are prepared to absorb all the experts in the world, how about we call it the World Assembly? Xia Xiaolu rolled his eyes and said, are you preparing to provoke my World Alliance? If you anger my master, I won't be able to do anything about it. Chu Xiu also thought in his heart, if you call it the World Assembly, what will Xiongba think? Then what do you think we should call it? Mo Tianlin was somewhat unconvinced and asked back. Xia Xiaolu patted the floating feather blade behind him and said, everyone uses blades and swords, how about we call it the Alliance of Blades and Swords? Luo Feiheng pointed at the bloodied spear red kite next to him with some dissatisfaction and snorted, are those who don't use blades and swords allowed to join? What kind of lousy name is this? Saying this, Luo Feiheng turned his gaze to Chu Xiu and said, these two fellows are somewhat unreliable. Since you are the one who suggested this, what do you want to call it? Chu Xiu pondered for a moment and said, We should establish an organization and secretly cooperate with each other. This kind of thing should be low-key. The name doesn't need to be too resounding. How about 9-branch hall? The three of them looked at each other and Luo Feiheng asked curiously, 9-branch hall? What's so particular about it? Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, 90% of your strength, 10% of your results, and 10% of your leeway so that you won't exhaust yourself physically and mentally. You and I were born in the martial world, and in our lives, we will face countless life and death battles and struggle in this chaotic world. The reason I want to unite everyone and establish the 9-branch hall is so that everyone can have an easier time in this chaotic world. We only need to use 90% of our strength to accomplish 10% of our tasks, and we don't need to use all of our strength. That's why it's called the 9-branch hall. The three of them nodded and all of them felt a bit emotional. The one who felt the most emotional was probably Luo Feiheng, who had a seemingly unreliable appearance. As a woman, she had to bear more than anyone else on her journey. At that moment, Chu Xiu took out another gold coin. This was the 9-dragon coin unique to the land of Eastern Qi. The land of Eastern Qi was rich and prosperous, so other than some normal copper and silver, the land of Eastern Qi also specially made this kind of gold coin as a normal transaction item. On it was engraved the scene of a branch of the Jiang dynasty of Eastern Qi being taught a divine secret technique by 9 dragons. After the Lu dynasty took power, in order to show their magnanimity, they didn't ban the 9-dragon coin and continued to distribute it. Chu Xiu extended his hand, cut off a corner of the coin and said, everyone in the world comes for benefits. The 9-branch hall isn't for loyalty, but for mutual benefits. So, no matter if it's the Tao or the demon, as long as they are reliable, as long as they have strength, they can join the 9-branch hall. This 9-dragon coin is our symbol. Whoever robs a new person into the 9-branch hall will leave their own martial imprint on the 9-dragon coin and give it to the new person to prove their identity. After all, we are all scattered throughout the martial world. If the person you robs and doesn't know anyone else and misunderstands you, it will be very awkward. Luo Feiheng and the others nodded. Chu Xiu had thought of these details very thoroughly. After the general discussion was over, everyone chatted for a while before leaving. Actually, no one cared too much about the 9-branch hall. Perhaps even they themselves could not imagine how this organization, which seemed like a game to them, would develop to such an extent in the end. Chu Xiu stood on the windowsill of the inn and watched Mo Tianlin and the others leave. He played with the 9-dragon coin in his hand. He roped in Luo Feiheng and the others to establish the 9-branch hall on a whim. However, he already had this thought before. In this martial world, it was true that one was respected by strength, but the prerequisite was that one had the strength to fight against the world alone. Even if one reached the level of Dugu Weiwei and immortal Ning Xuanji in the past, one still wouldn't dare to say that one was unrivaled under the heavens. In the original plot, although his identity became the demon sect leader, he was far from reaching the level of Dugu Weiwei in the past. Now that the plot had begun to change, it was time for Chu Xiu to use his own advantages and develop a path that was beneficial to him. Establishing the 9-branch hall was one of his plans. Whether it was Lu Fengxian or Luo Feiheng, these outstanding characters in the original plot, Chu Xiu would do his best to befriend them. In the end, he would weave a large net, a net that would cover the entire martial world. Just now, when Xie Xiaolu asked if the 9-branch hall had a leader, Chu Xiu's answer was no. However, it was only for now. As for whether there would be one in the future, that was an unknown. Chapter 260. Since the matter with Eastern Qi had been settled, Chu Xiu did not want to stay here any longer. He chose to return to the Guanzhong torture room directly. When Chu Xiu returned to Guanzhong, all the cultivators he met along the way, whether they were of a higher position or stronger than Chu Xiu, all nodded to Chu Xiu as a greeting. As for those who were weaker than Chu Xiu in terms of strength and position, even if they were from the headquarters or from the punishment department, they all cupped their hands and greeted Chu Xiu respectfully. The Guanzhong torture room was very realistic. In the past, Chu Xiu was not very famous in the whole of Guanzhong. He was not even as famous as Yuqi Zhongping and the other young cultivators of the Guanzhong torture room. But now, after the God Weapon Convention, Chu Xiu had become 6th on the Longhu leaderboard. It could be said that he had become famous overnight. The Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall was not closed off. When the God Weapon Convention had just ended, they had already found out about the situation through the news from the pugilistic world's media. This time, Chu Xiu was representing the Guanzhong torture room to participate in the God Weapon Conference. So, The more attention Chu Xiu made in the God Weapon Conference, the more attention Guanzhong Torture Room would gain. As for jealousy, when there was a gap between you and someone, they might be jealous. But when the gap between you and that person was large enough, the jealousy would no longer exist. After all, it was a joke to say that you were jealous of a height that you could never reach in your lifetime. Just like how no one in the pugilistic world would be jealous of Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji, because they were already legendary existences. Before Chu Xiu reached the entrance of the torture hall, he saw Chu Yuanxing coming over. He patted Chu Xiu's shoulder excitedly and said, "Brother Chu, you did a good job this time. You have greatly increased the reputation of the Guanzhong Torture Room." Strictly speaking, Chu Yuanxing was not a member of the Guanzhong Torture Room, but in fact he was inseparable from the Guanzhong Torture Room. So, when Chu Xiu helped the Guanzhong Torture Room at the God Weapon Conference, he was also helping him. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Big brother, you're too polite. Since I'm already a member of the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall, I naturally have to think about the reputation of the Guanzhong Disciplinary Hall." Hearing this, Chu Yuanxing could not help but smile proudly. Speaking of which, he could be considered as the person who introduced Chu Xiu to the Guanzhong Torture Room. Back then, when Chu Xiu saved him, he could have chosen to give Chu Xiu other things to repay him for saving his life. But at that time he did not know why he only wanted to introduce Chu Xiu to the Guanzhong Torture Room. Now it seemed that he had made a good move. He had roped in a powerful person for the Guanzhong Torture Room. In the past, Chu Yuanxing had also recommended many people to join the Guanzhong Torture Room. But although those people were somewhat capable, they were generally mediocre. They were not as outstanding as Chu Xiu. But now, Chu Xiu had made a great contribution to the Guanzhong Torture Room. As the person who recommended Chu Xiu, he was also proud. "By the way, Brother Chu, did anything major happen in the Guanzhong Torture Room recently?" Chu Xiu asked. After all, he had been away for a few months. He did not know if there were any problems with his subordinates. Chu Yuanxing shook his head and said, "Nothing major, but there is something related to you." "What is it?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and asked. Chu Yuanxing smiled and said, "You crippled Swordmaster Fei Mo, an elite disciple of Sword King City's previous generation in Eastern Qi. This matter made Sword King City very angry. The Xinjiang Hall's Hall Master, Qinji Sword Sect's Pei Zhanglin, personally came to Guanzhong's punishment hall half a month ago to seek an explanation from the hall master. He wanted to severely punish you and give Sword King City an explanation. I'm afraid those people from Sword King City are really used to being arrogant. Pei Zhanglin also doesn't know what he's doing. He dared to challenge the hall master as soon as he stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster stage. In the end, he was forced back by the hall master with a single move before he could even draw his sword." Chu Xiu nodded. In fact, he had already expected this. He was the face of the Guanzhong Torture Room. He had made a name for himself on behalf of the Guanzhong Torture Room, but the internal department of the Guanzhong Torture Room punished him because of this matter. It would chill the hearts of many martial artists in the Guanzhong Torture Room and make the Guanzhong Torture Room lose face. Of course, there was a limit to this. Chu Xiu only crippled Fei Mo, not Fang Qishao. Therefore, Sword King City only sent a hall master instead of the sect master. If Chu Xiu was really crazy and caused big trouble, Guan Xiu wouldn't be able to handle it even if she wanted to. "By the way, Big Brother, is Hall Master Guan in the main hall? I have to report to Hall Master Guan first when I come back this time," Chu Xiu asked. Chu Yuanxing said, "There are some things in the Guangdong area that require Hall Master to personally deal with. He will probably be back tomorrow. You stay here for a day first and report to Hall Master tomorrow. Also, tell me some details about the Divine Weapon Conference." Now the news of the Divine Weapon Conference is spread by the wind-sweeping pavilion. Some of the details are not clear. It is definitely better for you to explain as the person involved. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Then I will have to trouble you today, Big Brother." As Chu Xiu spoke, he directly followed Chu Yuanxing to his courtyard. When Chu Xiu returned to the Guanzhong Torture Room, Shen Bai, who had his cultivation crippled, was also sent back to the Azure Water Sword sect. When Shen Bai was crippled by Chu Xiu, he was immediately treated by the Mirror Lake Manor's martial artists. Afterwards, the Mirror Lake Manor's martial artists all ran away. It wasn't like Shen Bai was left alone. A few rogue martial artists brought Shen Bai away and escorted him all the way back to the Azure Water Sword sect. Of course, these rogue martial artists didn't really have good intentions. They just wanted to use this matter to ask for some benefits from the Azure Water Sword sect. Right now, in the Azure Water Sword sect's main hall, The unconscious Shen Bai was lying on a stretcher and was placed in the middle of the entire main hall. Lu Gongyuan looked at Shen Bai, who had an extremely low qi presence. It was as if Shen Bai had suddenly aged by more than 10 years. There were still Do Guangxin and a few other Azure Water Sword Sect core disciples around, and the atmosphere was already oppressive to the extreme. The few rogue martial artists that escorted Shen Bai were somewhat regretful at this moment. From the looks of it, what if the Azure Water Sword Sect killed all of them to vent their anger? Just as these few people were about to die from fear, Lu Gongyuan sighed and waved his hand. Many thanks for sending my disciple back. You may leave. Someone will bring you to collect some elixirs as a thank you gift. The few rogue martial artists then let out a long breath and quickly said, Many thanks, Senior Lu. This is what we should do. With that, they hurriedly retreated out of the room. After they left, Do Guangxin spoke with bloodshot eyes. Chu Xiu deserves to be killed. Master, little junior brother has been crippled. We must find that Chu Xiu to seek justice for this matter. Shen Bai was their Azure Water Sword Sect's future hope. Do Guangxin and the others were more or less envious and jealous of Shen Bai, but they knew that their potential was already at the limit. In the future, only Shen Bai would be able to lead the Azure Water Sword Sect to rise. Without the skin, where would the hair attach? Only with Shen Bai's rise, the Azure Water Sword Sect could rise, and they would still be disciples of the 7 sects and 8 schools. Now that Shen Bai was crippled, the Azure Water Sword Sect's hope of rising was forcefully crushed by Chu Xiu. Once Lu Gongyuan died, their Azure Water Sword Sect would be forcefully kicked out of the 7 sects and 8 schools. Lu Gongyuan closed his eyes and revealed a trace of grief on his aged face. His wrinkles seemed to have deepened. Chu Xiu deserves to be killed, but how do we kill him? He is our enemy's hero. To us, Chu Xiu is an enemy that must be killed. But to the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu is a hero that helped them become famous. Even if we personally go to the Guanzhong torture room, do you think the Guanzhong torture room will hand him over? I am old and can no longer use the sinking river sword. Even if I can use this sword, I will not be able to defeat Guan Xiyu's divine ability, 9 transformations. Of course, if I insist on killing Chu Xiu, it is not difficult. I might be old, but I can still pick up a sword. At most, I will be shameless and guard the Guanzhong torture room. Chu Xiu cannot possibly stay in the Guanzhong for his entire life. But do you know what the consequences are? The consequences are that I am bullying the weak. The Azure Water Sword Sect's reputation will be ruined, and people will say that the Azure Water Sword Sect is a sore loser. Even if I don't care about my reputation and forcefully kill Chu Xiu, it will incur the wrath of the Guanzhong torture room. Even if it is for their own reputation, the Guanzhong torture room will not remain silent. When I'm here, I can protect all of you by risking my life. But what if I'm dead? You will be facing the endless suppression of the Guanzhong torture room. When that happens, the Azure Water Sword Sect will not just be kicked out of the 7 sects and 8 factions, it will be exterminated. Do Guangxin and the others' eyes were red and were silent. They all knew that it wasn't that Lu Gongyuan didn't want to take revenge for Shen Bai. He wanted to kill Chu Xiu more than anyone else. Shen Bai was a disciple that he had raised since he was young. In order to nurture Shen Bai, Lu Gongyuan put in all his effort and treated Shen Bai as his own son. But now, Lu Gongyuan chose to endure not because he was afraid but because he was thinking for them. He was afraid that after he died, they would be retaliated by the Guanzhong torture room. Lu Gongyuan squatted down and took out the spirit medicine to feed Shen Bai. He even personally used his qi to comb through the medicinal effects. He closed his eyes and sighed, Shen Bai was crippled and it was my fault. Back then, I kept Chu Xiu alive because I wanted to use him as a whetstone for Shen Bai. I wanted Shen Bai to kill this enemy and achieve success. Who would have thought that Chu Xiu would actually grow so terrifyingly? He didn't become Shen Bai's whetstone, but Shen Bai became his whetstone. I was still too anxious. Do Guangxin hurriedly said, Master, don't say that. That Chu Xiu was too ruthless. Normally, when disciples from large sects fight, they would hold back. Who would have thought that Chu Xiu would disregard the rules and cripple his junior apprentice brother? Lu Gongyuan waved his hand and said, Wrong is wrong. There is no need to explain anymore. Chu Xiu and Shen Bai have a blood feud. Whether it was to cripple or kill, he was decisive. If he held back, then he would be indecisive. Alright, you guys can leave first. After hearing Lu Gongyuan's words, Do Guangxin and the others had no choice but to leave. Chapter 261. In the Grand Hall, with the help of Lu Gongyuan's qi, the medicinal effects constantly seeped into Shen Bai's body, causing Xinbai, who had been unconscious for nearly a month, to slowly wake up. The moment Xinbai saw Lu Gongyuan, he knew where he was. His eyes couldn't help but reveal a trace of pain and unwillingness. After a while he spoke bitterly, "Master, I am sorry. I lost." Besides apologizing, Xinbai didn't know what else to say. He wasn't someone with a weak mental state like Lin Kaiyun, who would be completely disheartened and dispirited after suffering a setback. Even though his cultivation was crippled, Xinbai felt more guilt towards the Azure Water Sword sect and towards his master, Lu Gongyuan. Lu Gongyuan treated him like his own son and taught him everything. He even placed the entire Azure Water Sword sect's future on Xinbai's shoulders. In the end, after a single battle, Xinbai was defeated and crippled. He was defeated so miserably. It could be said that the entire Azure Water Sword sect's future was lost in his hands. How could he not feel guilty? Even his hatred towards Chu Xiu wasn't as heavy as his current guilt. Patting Xinbai's hand, Lu Gongyuan sighed, "There is no need to say sorry. This is all fake karma. Even I didn't expect Chu Xiu to actually grow to this stage. If the heavens wanted to end my Azure Water Sword sect, without Chu Xiu there would still be Zhang Xiu and Wang Xiu. The result would still be the same. But I am unwilling." Xinbai gritted his teeth. "After cultivating for more than 10 years, I am just one step away from bringing the Azure Water Sword sect back to prominence. But now I am crippled. Master, your efforts are all in vain." Xinbai knew how much the Azure Water Sword sect paid to nurture him. Even if the Azure Water Sword sect found another young martial artist with the same talent as Xinbai, the Azure Water Sword sect wouldn't be able to nurture a second Xinbai. Because the Azure Water Sword sect had limited resources, Lu Gongyuan's energy was also limited. But right at this moment, Lu Gongyuan suddenly said, "You are truly unwilling?" Xinbai nodded heavily. No one would be unwilling to accept this kind of thing. Lu Gongyuan sighed, "There is always a way out. Even if our Azure Water Sword sect is facing the risk of decline, our ancestors still left us a chance of survival. This chance of survival might not be reliable, and I don't even know if it is real or fake. But apart from it, I have no other way to revitalize the Azure Water Sword sect. Are you willing to give it a try?" Xinbai struggled to stand up, gritted his teeth and said, "No matter what method it is, this disciple is willing to try." Lu Gongyuan sighed again and said, "In that case, come with me." As he spoke, Lu Gongyuan brought Xinbai to the back mountain of the Azure Water Sword sect. Apart from Lu Gongyuan, who frequented this place, no one else was allowed to enter. "Xinbai, do you remember the legend of my Azure Water Sword sect?" Lu Gongyuan asked. Xinbai nodded and said, "Of course I remember. Legend has it that the Azure Water River was created when two ancient masters fought. One of the masters used a sword to slash it open. Of course, this was only a legend and no one knew if it was true or not. But the only thing that could be confirmed was that there were indeed sword Dao experts who fought here at Zhanglan River. The Zhanglan Sword sect's founder saw the sword scars left behind by the experts here, which was why he suddenly had an epiphany. His strength improved greatly and he established the sect here. After thousands of years of development, it became one of the 7 sects and 8 schools, the Zhanglan Sword sect." Lu Gongyuan suddenly said, "What if I say the legend is true? Is this huge Azure Water River really created by a human?" Xinbai's eyes revealed a trace of shock. "What? It's true?" With Xinbai's current cultivation, he couldn't imagine what it was like to create a river with a single slash. Even a martial Dao master like Lu Zongyuan couldn't do this. To be able to do this, they might not be humans anymore. It would be more appropriate to call them immortals or gods. Lu Gongyuan said in a deep voice, "It might sound unbelievable, but it is indeed true. And when the two masters fought, one of them was seriously injured at the location of the Azure Water Sword sect. In the past, my Azure Water Sword sect's ancestor was just an ordinary hunter. He accidentally rescued that expert, but that level of expert had already surpassed the limits of the human body. Ordinary methods were simply unable to save him. Moreover, that expert was already on the verge of death. But before that expert died, he drew a sword scar that contained the inheritance of the martial Dao intent for my Azure Water Sword sect's ancestor. It is because of that sword scar that the Azure Water Sword sect exists today. Otherwise, if it was like the legends where my Azure Water Sword sect's ancestor only saw the traces left behind during a battle and established the Azure Water Sword sect, then my Azure Water Sword sect's ancestor was truly a heavenly prodigy. I'm afraid he would have long been accepted into a major sect instead of being a nameless individual." When Xinbai heard these secrets from Lu Gongyuan, his pale face couldn't help but reveal a trace of shock. With his cultivation level, hearing these things was like listening to legends. A sword scar left behind on the verge of death created one of the 7 sects and 8 schools, the Azure Water Sword sect. How strong was this person? Most importantly, such a master was seriously injured on the spot. How strong was the person who killed him? Lu Gongyuan said in a deep voice, "These things are the core secrets of the Azure Water Sword sect. It must be handed over to the next sect master, so even your eldest senior brother and the others don't know about it." In the past, that master left behind a powerful cultivation technique and asked the founder of the Azure Water Sword sect to find a fated person to help him pass it down. Of course, the members of the Azure Water Sword sect could also cultivate it, but that master bluntly said that the founder of the Azure Water Sword sect didn't have the qualifications to cultivate this cultivation technique. Humans are selfish, and the founder of the Azure Water Sword sect was the same. He tried to cultivate this cultivation technique, but found that he couldn't make up his mind to cultivate it. Later on, the Azure Water Sword sect didn't show this cultivation technique to anyone and only allowed the elites of the sect to try it. But without exception, all of them failed. In the past, that master asked the Azure Water Sword sect to find a fated person to pass down the cultivation technique, but in the end, the Azure Water Sword sect kept the cultivation technique for themselves and only allowed their own disciples to try it. Needless to say, this kind of behavior was somewhat immoral and very selfish. But none of the Azure Water Sword sect's sect masters actually thought of showing this cultivation technique to outsiders. It was due to greed, but it was also human nature. What kind of cultivation technique was left behind by such a master? Was it a 9-revolution cultivation technique, a paragon cultivation technique, or a legendary peerless divine technique? If the Azure Water Sword sect handed over this kind of cultivation technique, then they would be the real idiots. But it wasn't known if this was due to their selfishness. After so many years, countless Azure Water Sword sect's elites, even the sect master, had personally tried it, but they all failed. Lu Gongyuan pressed the trigger and a cave actually appeared at the back of the mountain. He walked into the cave with Shenbai. In the deepest part of the cave, there was a skeleton sitting in the middle. The skeleton was very strange. Even though it was a skeleton, it didn't have the slightest feeling of terror. Instead, it was completely white and was actually emitting a sword aura like the edge of a sword. This skeleton was actually like a sword, causing Shenbai, who was a swordsman, to involuntarily have the desire to worship it. At this moment, beside the skeleton, there were more than a dozen skeletons, but they were all in a kneeling position towards the skeleton in the middle. Lu Gongyuan spoke in a deep voice, "The skeleton in the center is the skeleton of that master. After millions of years, it still remains immortal and is still as resplendent as before. The surrounding skeletons are the elites of our Azure Water Sword sect who tried to cultivate this cultivation technique. Some of them were even the sect master." After passing down the position to the next sect master, they chose to come here for a life and death seclusion to cultivate this cultivation technique. You have also seen the result. If you don't succeed, you will die. These seniors are kneeling here and also have the intention to apologize to that master. The sect seniors who chose to come here to cultivate this cultivation technique all had amazing talent and strength. Some were even stronger than you. There were many who reached the martial Dao master realm, but all of them died here. If you choose to cultivate this cultivation technique, there is almost no chance of survival. If you don't cultivate, your martial arts might be crippled, but you are still young. My Azure Water Sword sect can also give you a lifetime of riches and honor. Shenbai didn't even consider and said, "Master, there is no need to say anything more. I choose to cultivate this cultivation technique." There were plenty of martial artists who had their martial arts crippled, but for most martial artists, the feeling of having their martial arts crippled was simply worse than death. If they had never obtained such powerful strength, it was fine for them to be ordinary people for the rest of their lives. But they had already tasted the feeling of power, and the result was that they were suddenly knocked down from the clouds. This feeling was truly worse than death. If it was a martial artist with mediocre strength, then so be it. They might choose to live on. But Shenbai was different. He was an extremely prideful person. Back when he faced Chu Xiu on the stage, he knew at the last moment that he would most likely lose, but he didn't choose to escape. Instead, he used a secret technique to fight to the death with Chu Xiu. Now, he naturally wouldn't choose to live on in such a humiliating manner. Since he still had a chance, even though this chance was extremely slim, he had to grab it. If he didn't succeed, then he would die trying. Lu Gongyuan sighed, "Since you have such determination, then I won't say anything more. The cultivation technique is here." As he spoke, Lu Gongyuan waved his hand and swept off the dust on the wall. Rows of sharp sword qi words appeared, as if they were carved by a long sword. Among them, the most eye-catching were the opening 4 sentences. 10,000 qi is born, the sword pierces the crippled acupuncture point. Return to origin martial arts, Zhong Yuan's contributions are great. Lu Gongyuan spoke in a deep voice. To cultivate this cultivation technique, one must first cripple one's martial arts. This first step would cause 99% of people to shrink back. In the past, I also had the thought of cultivating this cultivation technique, but in the end, I didn't have the courage to take this step and gamble on a slim chance. Right now, this cultivation technique is your last chance, and also the Azure Water Sword sect's last chance. It all depends on whether or not you can grasp it. Remember, the name of this cultivation technique is 10,000 Sword Return Sect. Chapter 262. Azure Billow Sword Sect and Shunbai had bet their last bit of luck on this gamble. The atmosphere was solemn and stirring. Compared to Azure Billow Sword Sect, the Evil Extreme Sect, which also had elite disciples killed by Chu Xiu, was much more relaxed. The Evil Extreme Sect was one of the 7 sects and 8 schools, but because of its relationship with the Kunlun Devil cult, it was extremely low-key. Although the Evil Extreme Sect wasn't located in the deepest north like the Drifting Snow City, it was still considered close to the Drifting Snow City. With such a neighbor, the Evil Extreme Sect could be said to be even more low-key in recent years. At this time, in a side hall of the Evil Zenith Sect, a bare-chested, handsome young martial artist was sitting cross-legged on the ground, cultivating. There was a strange blood-red dragon tattoo on his chest, and as he circulated his true qi, the blood-red dragon's body actually swelled up and down in accordance with his breathing rhythm. It was a very strange sight. In his hand there was also a blood-red long spear. The entire body of the spear was carved into the shape of a dragon's body. The dragon's tail was the spear's tip, and the dragon's head was the spear's handle. It looked slightly sinister. At this moment, a martial artist shrouded in a black robe pushed open the door and entered. The man immediately opened his eyes. The strangest thing was that his pupils were actually vertical at this moment, and they were also a strange blood-red color like some kind of snake. But in an instant they returned to normal. Knocking on the door is a good habit. If you can't learn it, I will use my blood dragon to teach you well. The black-robed martial artist laughed awkwardly. Yi Tianxie, don't be ungrateful. I am here to give you information. One good news, one bad news, which one do you want to hear first? Seeing Yi Tianxie's eyes turning red again, and his pupils starting to vertical, the martial artist quickly said, all right, I will not keep you in suspense. The good news is that during the Divine Weapon Conference, those guys from Phaseless Demon Sect jumped out to cause trouble again. They wanted to seize the Hidden Sword Villa's Devil Sword Eternal Yearning, but in the end, it ended in a lose-lose situation. Yi Tianxie said lightly, this is good news for the sect, but what kind of good news is it for me? They were both demonic sects, but the Evil Extreme Sect was a traitor of the former Kunlun Devil cult, while the Phaseless Demon Sect was a loyal follower of the former Kunlun Devil cult. Naturally, the two of them were mortal enemies. The black-robed man laughed and said, the sect has spent so much to nurture you. Isn't the good news of the sect also good news for you? Don't be so calculative. But there's also bad news. Tong Kaitai, the devil hunter you chose to block the bullet, is dead. He died in the hands of Chu Xiu, the young hero of the Guanzhong torture room. Yi Tianxie's expression did not change when he heard this. He just said lightly, he died so soon? He's really useless. I thought he could at least hold on for a while. But this guy's brain is not very good. If the Evil Extreme Sect did not save him, I'm afraid he would have been killed by the Taoist master abode of Mount Longhu long ago. When Tong Kaitai appeared at the God Weapon Conference, most people in the Jianghu thought that the Evil Extreme Sect had really declined. After so many years of silence, they had not nurtured any outstanding talents. They actually wanted to recruit a guy like Tong Kaitai who had a bad reputation and was even a wandering martial artist to keep up appearances. But in reality, the Evil Extreme Sect had been enduring all these years. For the Evil Extreme Sect, they no longer cared about the reputation of the outside world. The only thing that mattered was their own development. These years, the demonic path had been on the decline. Their Evil Extreme Sect was close to the Temple of Light and the fluttering snow city of the far north. They were all in the northern Yen land, so it was better for them to keep a low profile. For example, the phaseless demon sect had been stubbornly loyal to the long-gone Kunlun devil cult. What was the result? Didn't they still get chased around like stray dogs and everyone wanted to beat them up? Tong Kai Tai was just a smokescreen thrown out by the evil extreme sect to make the outside world think that the evil extreme sect was very weak. But they could not let go of their pride, so they found someone like this to keep up appearances. The black-robed man shook his head and said, I don't want to say this, but are you really not interested in the Longhu leaderboard? Others may not know, but I know that if you come out of seclusion, you can definitely compete with the Sword Chief, Fang Qishao, and the little celestial master, Zhang Qingzhen. The expression on Yi Tianxia's face did not change at all. He only said calmly, I will come out of seclusion to compete with them sooner or later. But not now but in the future. The Longhu leaderboard is just something wind-sweeping tower made up to fool those idiots. Do people really take this ranking seriously? Only those who can live to advance from the Longhu leaderboard will have the right to compete with me in the future. Otherwise they will be like that idiot Tong Kai Tai. So what if they rise to the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard? Even if they deserve to die they will still die. But after all, he was thrown out by my omniscient sect as a facade, and he was also personally chosen by me. Now that he is dead, my omniscient sect can't do nothing. Go and tell the sect master to find an opportunity to cause some trouble for the Guanzhong torture room or Chu Xiu. It will be enough to make our omniscient sect's presence known. Normally speaking, if a disciple dared to order the sect master to do something, it would simply be disgraceful. But in the omniscient sect this kind of thing was very normal. Yi Tianxia's identity was special, and they were already used to it. Therefore, the black-robed man simply nodded and immediately retreated. At this moment, in the Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu didn't know what happened in the Azure Billow Sword sect or the Omniscient sect. After drinking with Chu Yuanxing for an entire night, he came to report to Guan Xiu about the Divine Weapon Convention the next day. In the main hall's guest hall, Chu Xiu was waiting. Guan Xiu still had to deal with some official matters before coming over. This wasn't Guan Xiu purposely giving Chu Xiu the cold shoulder, but it was his habit. As long as there wasn't a huge mess, his routine wouldn't change. Right at this moment, a fragrant wind drifted over from the hall. Mei Qinglian leisurely walked over and placed a cup of tea in front of Chu Xiu. She softly said, Master will be here in a while. Official Chu, please wait for a moment. Chu Xiu hurriedly stood up and cupped his hands. Sorry to trouble madam. Chu Xiu had never underestimated this woman. She was Guan Xiu's wife. Although she didn't have any authority in the Guanzhong torture room, as long as she whispered pillow talk into Guan Xiu's ear, it would affect a lot of things. It was obvious from the attitude of Wei Jueduan and the other torture officers. They were very cautious with Mei Qinglian. At this moment, Mei Qinglian suddenly took a step closer to Chu Xiu. Her cold face suddenly bloomed with a hint of a smile. Her entire body was filled with a mature charm, but her expression had always been cold and indifferent. At this moment, when she smiled, it was even more bewitching. If it wasn't for the fact that Chu Xiu had high attainments in the soul-extinguishing technique and his strong mental strength, he would probably have made a fool of himself. Official Chu represented the Guanzhong torture room in the God Weapon Conference this time. You have brought glory to the Guanzhong torture room. What is a cup of tea? I'm just a woman. I want to do my best for the torture hall, but I can't find the opportunity. Chu Xiu's expression didn't change as he said, There are only the strong and the weak in the pugilistic world. There is no distinction between men and women. I met a lady at the God Weapon Conference this time. Although she is a woman, she is stronger than most men. Who is she? Mei Qinglian's eyes twinkled. Her eyes were filled with charm and charm. It was very alluring. Wu County's Luo family Luo Feiheng. Chu Xiu took half a step back. He picked up the tea on the table and took a sip. Mei Qinglian took the opportunity to sit on the chair beside Chu Xiu. She sighed and said, Luo Feiheng? I have heard of her. This little sister is very impressive. Unfortunately, she was born in the wrong place. Sometimes women are like this. Their hearts are higher than the sky, but their lives are thinner than paper. If you want to fight for it, if you want to seize it, it is 100 or even 1,000 times more difficult than you men. Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said lightly, Where there is a will, there is a way. Heaven will not disappoint those who work hard. What I am afraid of is not the difficulty but the lack of the heart. At this time Mei Qinglian suddenly smiled and said, Well said. No wonder official Chu has such strength at such a young age. Oh right, I heard that official Chu obtained a divine weapon forged by Grandmaster Mo Yizi. Can I have a look at it? Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. However, he still untied the heavenly demon dance from his waist and placed it in front of Mei Qinglian. He said, "There was a mishap in the God Weapon Convention. This saber I obtained is not a divine weapon. It is only a 6th revolution precious weapon." Mei Qinglian stretched out her slender hand and gently stroked the saber. Her eyes revealed a trace of confusion. However, when he saw this, Chu Xiu's eyes shone with a strange light. The heavenly demon dance was a demonic murderous weapon. When it was forged, Chu Xiu and the others were first fused with the sharp qi from the heavenly demon order and the pure devil qi from the heavenly demon order. Finally, it even fused with Chu Xiu's blood qi. It could be said that this was a standard demonic murderous weapon. Not to mention an ordinary person, even a Xiantian realm martial artist would have their fingers cut by the sharp evil qi from the heavenly demon dance if they carelessly touched it. But now, Mei Qinglian was caressing the heavenly demon dance with ease. There was not the slightest abnormality on her hand. There was also no burst of true qi. What did this mean? It meant that the strength of her body was astonishing. Just her body alone was stronger than the inner force of a Xiantian realm martial artist. However, in Chu Xiu's impression, no one had ever said that Mei Qinglian knew martial arts. No one had ever said that she did not know martial arts. In any case, Chu Xiu could not see through her. In Chu Xiu's eyes, she was just an ordinary person. "What's the name of this saber?" Mei Qinglian suddenly asked. "Heavenly Demon Dance." Mei Qinglian put down the saber and chuckled. "Heavenly Demon Dance? That's a good name. It's a saber forged from the Heavenly Demon Order of the Kunlun Devil Cult. Now, it's named after the Heavenly Demon. It's quite appropriate. However, the Kunlun Devil Cult is a taboo in Jianghu. Official Chu is using such a strong demonic weapon. Isn't he afraid of being criticized by others?" Mei Qinglian raised her beautiful eyes and stared at Chu Xiu without blinking. Chapter 263. When Mei Qinglian asked about the Kunlun Devil Cult, a strange look appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. Mei Qinglian should know the status of the Kunlun Devil Cult in Jianghu. It was a little sensitive. Only close friends would discuss this kind of thing. He and Mei Qinglian didn't seem to be that close, right? However, Chu Xiu didn't have any scruples. He already treated the demonic dance as his weapon. What else was there to be scruples about? Therefore, Chu Xiu said directly, "It's just a weapon. What's there to criticize?" It should be known that a big sect like the Hidden Sword Villa dared to secretly restore one of the 3 devil weapons of the Kunlun Devil Cult, the Devil Sword Everlasting Yearning. From this matter, it could be seen what kind of attitude the Jianghu had toward the Devil Cult. To put it bluntly, they were not afraid of the Kunlun Devil Cult. They were just afraid of a powerful existence that could crush them at will. Everyone wanted to be the supreme in the world. Everyone wanted to be that supreme existence. No one was willing to be suppressed by someone. However, these former members of the Kunlun Devil Cult did it. In order to prevent the fear of the past from returning to their hearts, they tried their best to kill everything related to the Kunlun Devil Cult. Therefore, they were not afraid of the Kunlun Devil Cult, but an existence that was stronger than them. The people of Jianghu have already seen how I got this saber. With the Devil Sword Everlasting Yearning in front of me, this small problem of mine is nothing. Mei Qinglian looked at Chu Xiu with a strange look. She was about to say something when there were footsteps coming from outside. Mei Qinglian immediately stood up and moved away from Chu Xiu. Guan Xiu walked in and saw Mei Qinglian. He said softly, "Madam, why are you here?" Mei Qinglian said angrily, "It's all because of you, master." Official Chu represented the Guanzhong torture room to make a name for himself in Jianghu and made a great contribution, but you left him hanging here. What are you talking about? I'm afraid that outsiders might think that the Guanzhong torture room is neglecting a hero, so I can only come here to entertain you. Guan Xiu smiled and said, "Furin is still the most attentive." Guan Xiu turned around and said to Chu Xiu, "Chu Xiu, don't take it to heart. There have been a few matters in the punishment hall lately, so I made you wait." Chu Xiu hurriedly said, "Hall master is very busy every day. A little wait is nothing." Guan Xiu nodded in satisfaction. She was afraid that Chu Xiu would become arrogant because he had made a great contribution this time. Now it seemed that Chu Xiu was very clear-headed. The Guanzhong torture room system determined that no matter how outstanding a person was, he would not receive preferential treatment in the Guanzhong torture room. Everything could only be determined by merit. Although this made the overall standard of the Guangzhou torture room not bad, it also caused some outstanding people to feel that it was unfair in the Guangzhou torture room. After all, in the outside world, a talent like Chu Xiu might not be nurtured with all the resources of a sect, but he would at least receive preferential treatment. At this moment, Mei Qinglian also said, "If you want to talk about serious matters, a woman like me will not understand, so I won't interfere." As she spoke, Mei Qinglian also left leisurely. However, when she passed by Chu Xiu, she glanced at Chu Xiu. Her gaze seemed to have a hidden meaning. Chu Xiu lowered his head and cupped his hands. "Take care, foreign." Guan Xiu gestured for Chu Xiu to sit down and said, "Tell me everything about the God Weapon Conference. Be more detailed." Chu Xiu nodded and told Guan Xiu all the information in detail. After listening, Guan Xiu shook her head and said, "I didn't expect there to be such an inside story in this God Weapon Conference." The Hidden Sword Villa was indeed a little impatient this time. The demonic nature in the 9 transformation demonic weapon is hard to get rid of. Even if the phaseless demon sect did not cause trouble this time, I reckon that the Hidden Sword Villa would not be able to completely restore the demonic longing sword and erase the demonic nature on it. The Hidden Sword Villa is a sword sect, but their dedication to the sword has already surpassed the sword principle itself. This is an extreme path. In my opinion, it has already gone astray. Chu Xiu nodded and did not say anything. However, he had a guess in his heart. If it were not for him, the Hidden Sword Villa would not have taken out the longing sword so early. Because of his butterfly effect, it caused the Sky Devil Order fragment to fall into the hands of the Hidden Sword Villa. This caused the Hidden Sword Villa to have a new idea and finally set up such a scheme to secretly restore the demonic sword during the God Weapon Conference. If it were not for Chu Xiu, the Hidden Sword Villa might have continued to keep the demonic sword. After they thought of a safe method, they would then restore the demonic sword. After asking Chu Xiu a few more questions, Guan Xiu spoke in a deep voice. "The Guangzhou torture room will help you settle the trouble you caused during the God Weapon Conference. The people from the Sword Royal City have already retreated. As for the Azure Water Sword sect, even if Lu Gongyuan comes personally, I am not afraid. As for the Northern Plains Evil Extreme sect, the evil Dao is now in a decline. Even if you kill the young expert that they pushed out to maintain their image, they will not dare to be too brazen. At most, it will be a symbolic revenge. Don't worry about it. But you have to remember clearly that the Guangzhou torture room will help you deal with this matter because you have a mission from the Guangzhou torture room. But if you dare to act recklessly and cause any trouble because of this matter, according to the rules of the Guangzhou torture room, you will be punished severely." At the end of her speech, Guan Xiu also gave Chu Xiu a little warning. Chu Xiu cupped his fist and said, "Hall Master, rest assured. This subordinate knows his limits." Guan Xiu nodded and said, "As long as you know your limits. This time you should be rewarded for your meritorious service. But according to the rules, the resources given by the disciplinary hall are too little for you. You shouldn't be interested in it." Chu Xiu secretly curled his lips. Guan Xiu also knew that the salary and rewards of the Guangzhou torture room were pitifully little. But due to various reasons he probably wouldn't change it in a short period of time. Guan Xiu continued, "So this time you still have to be rewarded. At the same time, I will also give you an additional identity." With that, Guan Xiu gave Chu Xiu a token. Aside from the sword and saber logo of the Guangzhou torture room, there were also the words Criminal Investigation Division and a 7. From today onwards, besides being the Guanxi Patrol, you are also a 7th grade secret agent of the Criminal Investigation Division. Generally, only martial artists at the 5 Qis forming the Origin Realm can be conferred the qualifications of a 7th grade secret agent. Above that, the 8th grade secret agent is the elite of the 5 Qis forming the Origin Realm. At the same time, they are also the deputy chiefs of the Criminal Investigation Division. The 9th grade secret agent is the pinnacle, and they are also the chiefs of the Criminal Investigation Division. Right now, your 7th grade secret agent is just an identity. It doesn't belong to any of the chiefs of the Criminal Investigation Division. But as long as you have a need, you can mobilize any secret agent under the rank of 7th grade. To be precise, your current position is far more powerful than your position as the patrol of the Jianzhou Prefecture. Guan Xiu was really generous this time. Even Chu Xiu didn't expect that Guan Xiu's reward would be a portion of the authority of the Criminal Investigation Division. Actually, thinking about it carefully, Guan Xiu didn't seem to be stingy. Since the establishment of the Guangzhou torture room, Guan Xiu had been more daring to delegate authority. Whether it was the disciplinary officer or a patrol like Chu Xiu, the authority in their hands wasn't small. Chu Xiu of the Criminal Investigation Division didn't know much about it, but he believed that it wouldn't be small. Chu Xiu put away the token and immediately cupped his hands at Guan Xiu. "Thank you, Hall Master." Guan Xiu waved her hand and said, "All right, I'm done here. You can go back to Guanxi to report." Chu Xiu nodded. After bidding farewell, he immediately returned to the Jianzhou prefecture. The news of Chu Xiu's return had long spread throughout the Guanzhong torture room. When Chu Xiu returned to the Jianzhou prefecture, the Ghost Hand monarch, Du Guangzhong, and other subordinates were waiting at the entrance of the patrol hall to welcome him. When they saw Chu Xiu appear, everyone immediately cupped their hands at Chu Xiu and said, "Congratulations on becoming famous in the underworld and shaking the underworld." Chu Xiu's performance at the God Weapon Conference had long spread throughout the underworld through the anemophilia. Naturally, they knew about it long ago. After hearing this news, whether it was Du Guangzhong, the Ghost Hand monarch, or the others, they were naturally very happy. Since they had already pledged their allegiance to Chu Xiu, their relationship with Chu Xiu was bound to be one of them. Now that Chu Xiu was famous in the underworld and he was even stronger, they, as his subordinates, were naturally honored. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "All right, don't be so mushy. I'm famous in the underworld, but it's probably not something good. As for shaking the underworld, don't even talk about it. Even martial Dao masters don't dare to say that. If I say it now, I'm afraid I'll be laughed at." After teasing for a while, Chu Xiu asked everyone about the movements in the Jianzhou prefecture. According to the reports of the Ghost Hand monarch and the others, the Jianzhou prefecture was very peaceful during the time he was away. The business that had been affected previously had completely returned to normal after the Ghost King sect incident. Moreover, Chu Xiu's subordinates, Wolf King and Fire Slave, had also stepped into the physical invulnerability realm. Previously, these two people were already at the peak of the inner invulnerability realm. However, when they were in the Blue Dragon Society, their missions were too tight. The time they spent on missions was actually longer than the time they spent on cultivation. Therefore, they had been stuck in this realm and had not broken through. After pledging their allegiance to Chu Xiu, they actually didn't have too many opportunities to fight. With free time and cultivation resources, these two people had naturally stepped into the physical invulnerability realm. As for Tangya and Yen Bugue, their strength had not changed much. After all, if they were to break through, they would be in the three-flower realm. This realm did not rely on the accumulation of internal force, but on enlightenment. For Chu Xiu to be able to step into the three-flower realm this time, he had to thank Taoist Xian Cheng of the Water Cloud Temple for preaching. The other reason was that he had to thank Yen Tingting. If it weren't for that 1-against-100 battle, Chu Xiu wouldn't have been able to step into the three-flower realm before the God Armament Conference. If he was only in the physical invulnerability realm, he wouldn't have been able to cause so much trouble at the God Armament Conference. Therefore this time Yen Tingting had really made Chu Xiu a success. At this time Du Guangzhong suddenly said, "Sir, although the Jianzhou prefecture has been peaceful during this time, there have been some personnel changes in the Guanxi area." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.